Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had the power to heal part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗧𝗵𝗲 from fanfiction. So let's start the video. Katsuki Bakugo was not in good mood. Ever since his quirk manifested, he had become even more volatile than before. Before he was loud, but he could control himself. His emotions were not as all over the place. He had even lashed out at his friend Izuku, or Deku as Katsuki had started calling him. Deku had been his friend before he even knew what a friend was. But something about him had started to irritate Katsuki. Deku was the same age as Katsuki, but he still hadn't manifested his quirk. He would tell Katsuki that he had one but could never shown it. It was a constant source of irritation for Katsuki, but he didn't understand why. Things at home did not help matters. His little sister Mizuki was sick. She had been sick for most of the 2 years she had been alive. She was born a few months after his 4th birthday, just after his quirk manifested. His super powerful quirk. His father had told him that he had been given such a powerful quirk so he could protect Mizuki and keep her safe. He couldn't explode what was making her sick though. His parents were at the hospital all the time. Mizuki would come home, but then they had to take her back. He would see his mom crying when she thought no one was looking, or when she was with Auntie Inko. His mom would cry and tell Auntie that she didn't want to lose Mizuki. Someone called Cancer was trying to take his sister, and Katsuki couldn't fight it, couldn't explode it, so he took it out on the world and the one person who would keep coming back to him, Deku. Deku would take all of Katsuki's outbursts, violence, and tears. Katsuki would rant at him, scream, and everything. Most times Katsuki would reduce his friend to tears, but Deku would come back every time. Sometimes he wouldn't say anything, he would just stand there looking at Katsuki with tears in his eyes. Deku always looked like he was about to cry, but it was the way that he looked at Katsuki. It was like he could see inside of him, all the fear, the anger, everything. Today had been a bad day. Katsuki knew it when Auntie had been the one to wake him up and make sure he got to school. His parents had gone to the hospital in the middle of the night. Katsuki didn't know much, but he knew that couldn't be good. As he sat under a tree, his knees tucked under his chin, his arms folded on top as a pillow for his head, he just wanted it to all be better. He heard Deku walk over to him. He could see the red high tops out of the corner of his eye, feel those eyes upon him. He had already knocked Deku down twice today. He even told him they weren't friends anymore, that he never wanted to see him again. He looked up at Deku and was about to say something when he heard the teacher call them both. When they walked over, he saw Auntie Inko standing there. She looked like she had been crying. His stomach fell to his feet. He didn't want to move. He felt a light tug on his sleeve and looked over as Deku pulled him along. "Katsuki, we need to go to the hospital. It is about Mizuki." "Auntie." His voice broke as he felt her arms slip around him and pick him up. He couldn't hold it any longer. The fear, all the emotion came pouring out as she held him as he cried. She made small circles on his back and told him it was okay. He didn't remember the car ride, but he recognized the hospital. He walked in holding his auntie's hand and Izuku holding her other hand. They went to different part of the hospital. It was incredibly quiet. Katsuki did not like that at all. When they approached a room with his dad and Izuku's dad sitting outside, he could tell his dad was crying. When his uncle noticed them, he whispered something in his dad's ear. He noticed his dad straighten up and wipe away the tears. His dad walked over and scooped Katsuki up and squeezed him tight. He started to tell Katsuki that Mizuki was sick and that she would be going to live in the stars. That she wouldn't be coming home with them, but that instead she was going to watch over them from there. Auntie had gone into the room while this was going on. A few minutes later, she opened the door and told Masaru that Mitsuki was ready for their son. Katsuki walked into the room. It was all white. His mom was sitting by his sister's bed looking terrible. She motioned for Katsuki to come to her. Slowly he did. When he got there, she wrapped him in the biggest hug he had ever felt. She started to cry on his shoulder. He simply patted her on the back and told her it was okay. He didn't know what else to do. He looked over her shoulder at his sister. There were tubes and the beeping machine. The machine was going slowly, not like other times when he had been here. She told him that his sister was going to the stars soon. As she said this, she broke and sat him down, collapsing into Inko's arms as the husbands came into the room. Masaru knelt next to his wife and held her. Katsuki watched for a moment before turning and looking at his little sister. "Sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry, Mizuki, my quirk wasn't strong enough." He quickly wiped at his tears. "I am sorry I let you down. I don't want you to go to the stars. Please don't go to the stars. I want you to come home. I promise to be the best big brother. I will let you play with all my toys and make sure no one ever hurts you." The tears couldn't be held back, and he closed his eyes and pleaded with every entity out there, every hero he could think of, every spirit he could imagine. He felt a hand take hold of his. Slowly opening his eyes, he saw Deku standing next to him. But Deku's eyes were glowing a brilliant green. "I can see it now, Kacchan, it will be okay." He let go of Katsuki's hand. He watched as Deku climbed up beside his sister, and took one of her hands in his and placed the other on her forehead. He looked over his shoulder at Katsuki. "Don't let them stop me. If they stop me, it won't work." "Deku, what are you doing?" "I can fix her," he whispered. Katsuki was about to say something. "Please, Kacchan, I can do this. If you were ever my friend, trust me this one time. I won't ask for anything ever again." For some reason, Katsuki nodded his head. A pale greenish-white fire slowly spread out from the hand on Mizuki's forehead. It began to envelope her whole body. Katsuki was about to yell when he noticed the pillow wasn't burning, and he couldn't feel any heat. In fact, he felt a gentle coolness. The fire was completely around Mizuki, and the beeping machine started to go faster, which caught the attention of the pair's parents. "Izuku!" Auntie yelled. His uncle started to run at them when Katsuki remembered what Deku had said. "Don't let them stop me." "No, stop." Katsuki yelled, raising his hand as they popped with his explosions. His uncle paused as his father and mother yelled at him to get out of the way. "No, DKU said he could save her." The fathers kept trying to grab him, but he would make small explosions on their arms. He was fighting like a rabid animal. It was when he heard Deku scream in pain that they were able to get a hold of him and pull him off to the side as the mothers rushed over. As Deku screamed, Mizuki began to cry. Deku fell off the bed as Mitsuki rushed to her daughter. Inko went to grab Deku, but a blackish-green fire erupted around him. The heat was intense. Inko activated her quirk to pull him away from the bed as his father Hisashi ran over and pulled him farther away. Hisashi had fire resistance due to his fire quirk, but as he had barely dragged Izuku a few feet before he yelled in pain and Izuku went limp. Suddenly the fire died out. Deku looked at Katsuki. "Don't cry anymore, it's okay, it's all gone now." Blood began to pour out of Deku's nose and ears. He coughed, and blood flew out. Katsuki watched Deku's eyes roll back, and he passed out. Katsuki could see Deku smiling. Chaos erupted in the room as doctors rushed in to try and gain control of the situation. 2 doctors immediately started to attend to Deku, while another went to Mitsuki, who was holding her daughter. The room went quiet when a small voice said, "Mama." Mitsuki looked down to see her daughter looking up at her, which shouldn't be. The doctors had used very heavy painkillers to keep Mizuki peaceful in her last hours. A female doctor ran over her eyes, glowing a brilliant rainbow color. The doctor's hands flew to her mouth. "The cancer. I can't see the cancer anymore, it's gone." Everyone in the room turned and looked at the unconscious boy on the floor. Katsuki ran over to his fallen friend and whispered in his ear, "You did it, Izuku, you did it." "Izuku." The sound of a beeping machine and whispers penetrated the darkness, pulling Izuku back to the land of the living. He slowly opened his eyes to the white-tiled ceiling. He managed to croak out, "Mom." The whispers stopped. "Izuku." His mother crossed the room in a heartbeat and had her arms around him. He could feel her tears on his shoulder. Another strong hand took a hold of his. "Son." Izuku looked past his mother's curls to see his dad holding his hand, looking down at him with a look of pride. The sound of the door opening and nurses coming in managed to make his mother pull back and step away from the bed. "Water." Izuku managed. His mother immediately pulled a bottle to her and opened it, handing it to him. He managed a few sips before he began to couch. His father caught the bottle before it slipped from his son's grasp. "Mizuki? Is she okay now?" he asked. "Yes, she is perfectly fine actually," a new voice said as it entered the room. The family turned to see one of the doctors entering the room. He was not very tall, but very bald with a large bushy mustache and blue eyes. Hello, I don't know if you remember me, but I am Dr. 𝗧𝗵𝗲. I was the doctor who originally performed the quirk exam on your son here. His father walked over and extended his hand. Yes, Dr. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, it is good to see you again. The doctor shook Hisashi and Inko's hands before walking over to Izuku. Hello again, Izuku, how are you feeling today? You gave us all quite a scare after using your quirk. You have been asleep for 2 days. Izuku looked over at his dad and the water bottle. His dad walked over and helped his son sit up and take a few more sips. My throat hurts, but I feel fine. Is Mizuki really okay? Is the cancer gone? Yes, it is, my boy. Do you know how you did it? I could see it, he said, his brow furrowed in thought. You could see it? What do you mean? Izuku closed his eyes in serious thought before taking another sip of water and thinking carefully. I could see what was hurting her. I could see her pain. Then what did you do? I took it away from her and put it in me, he said, pointing to his chest. Then I burned it away. Inko did her best to keep her voice calm and her emotions in check. Izuku, honey, are you saying you could see the cancer in Mizuki, and you took it out of her body and into yours? Then you burned it away. Izuku nodded his head. If it was for the steadying hand of her husband, she might have fainted at once. I can see when people are in pain, but it wasn't until I was looking at Mizuki that I somehow knew what to do. Like right now, you and Daddy are scared for me. And you are. I don't know what you are, but I know your bones hurt. Dr. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 laughed for a moment before he focused his gaze on Izuku. So could you make the bones in my hand not hurt as much? Izuku thought for a moment and reached his hand out to the doctor. Inko went to protest, but Hisashi stopped her. They watched as Izuku took a hold of one of the doctor's hands, and the white fire slowly spread from Izuku's hand to the doctor's. They watched Izuku wince before removing his, and then the white fire turned black for a few moments and faded out. You bones really hurt, the little boy said. The doctor simply looked at his hand in wonder. Fascinating. Well, doctor? Inko asked. It feels great. Amazing. You young man have a wonderful quirk. Izuku smiled as his mother came and sat on the edge of his bed. Her smile was dazzling. My little hero. Izuku just smiled at his mom. The doctor gave Izuku an exam and turned to his parents. With what little Izuku just told us, I can say for sure that he has no signs of cancer from our initial tests and everything looks fine. But to be on the safe side, we just need to run some more tests and he should be good to go home tomorrow morning as long as everything looks clear. Don't forget to update his quirk registration. The doctor turned and left the room looking at his hand, a smile spreading ear to ear. Yes, this might be perfect. The boy just needs to get stronger and then he can heal him. Katsuki. He was walking the halls to another part of the hospital holding an All Might plushie that they had picked up in the gift shop. Soon they found themselves standing outside a door. His mom knocked softly, and he heard his auntie tell her to come in. The door slowly opened, and there sitting up in bed was Izuku, with a smile on his face talking to his mom. Kachin. He felt his mom give him a little nudge. Go on, she whispered. Katsuki walked over looking at him. He could see that Izuku seemed happy. Katsuki hadn't seen him like this since before Mitsuki was born. Katsuki extended the plushie. This is for you, Izuku. Izuku beamed and took the plushie from his friend. I like you better like this. You don't look right when you're in pain. You too, Auntie Mitzi. Inko looked at Izuku. Could you see that their feelings were hurt? She said. Izuku nodded his head. I couldn't do anything. I really wanted to, but I couldn't, so I keep thinking about it and thinking about it. I know it had to do with Mizuki, but it wasn't until we were in the hospital room that I knew what to do. Is she okay, Auntie? Mitsuki smiled and walked over, pulling her nephew into a super big hug as she cried some happy tears. She is perfect. You took away all the cancer. She's going to be great. I can't thank you enough, Izuku. Our family owes you more than we could ever repay. Izuku hugged his aunt. It's okay, Auntie, as long as Kachin can be my friend again, that is all I need. Katsuki walked over to Izuku and joined in on the hug. I promise that we will always be friends. Izuku smiled. As the moms went to get something to drink, Izuku was left alone with Kachin. Was that your quirk? Katsuki asked. Uh-huh. Why didn't you use it before? I didn't know how. I could use the first part but not the others. The first part. I can see when people are in pain, in their bodies or in their hearts, but I didn't know what to do. I could feel something inside of me, but I couldn't do anything till the other day when we came to see Mizuki. Then what did you do? I took all her cancer and put it in me and then burned it all up. It really hurt though. When I take their hurt, I feel it. I could feel all the hurt that Mizuki had felt from the cancer. So, if you heal someone with a broken arm, you will get a broken arm? No, I think I will feel what that is like to have a broken arm. You took all my sister's pain into you, so you could heal her? You burned away the cancer. Yes. Katsuki realized in that moment that for the past 2 years he had been calling Izuku Midoriya Deku. He had gotten all the kids in the class to do the same thing. He had made his friend's life a living hell. The reason that Izuku never left him alone was that he could see the pain he was in, and he wanted to figure out how to help. He endured the hits and explosions, everything, the yelling, the screaming, Katsuki throwing Izuku's lunch away, not letting him play with the class, all of it. And he still saved Mizuki. He took all her pain into himself to save her. Izuku Midoriya was a hero. He was a true hero. If Katsuki was lucky, he may be half the hero that Izuku was. I'm sorry I was so bad to you, Izuku. You were hurting and didn't know better. Can we be friends again? I want that bad. We were always friends, Kacchin. The two boys hugged tightly. I promise, Izuku, I will always be your friend. I will protect you, and together we will be the greatest heroes ever. That's all I ever wanted. What are you going to call your quirk? I was thinking Spirit Fire. The boys' mothers stood outside the door with tears in their eyes. They gave the boys a moment before they came back in. Izuku, 8 years old. Izuku was walking down the street with his mom enjoying the nice spring day. They were on the way from the store with ingredients for Katsuki, Izuku's favorite dish. The last 2 years had been adjustment for the Midoriyas. More importantly, they had to keep an eye on their son, who seemed to want to run and heal everyone he met. He could see people in pain and would try to wiggle away or get his parents to stop and run over to do something. Katsuki would have to walk Izuku all the way into the apartment to keep him out of trouble, or to his house, as they couldn't leave Izuku home alone. 𝐒𝐭 had come home one time to find Izuku with the next-door neighbor, who had fallen and broken her hip, till Izuku had climbed across 3 balconies to get in and heal her. He would heal kids on the playground and was constantly getting in trouble for it, but I didn't stop him. The only thing that finally stopped him somewhat was when a pro hero had come to talk the kids at his school, and Katsuki had asked the hero about using your quirk without a license and how I could make so you could never be a hero or get a license to use your quirk. As they were walking, Izuku suddenly stopped and looked around as the pro hero 𝗵𝗲 came crashing through a building. 𝗒𝐭 grabbed her son and ducked behind a car to avoid the debris. A villain with some sort of magnetism power began to hurl trash cans and other objects at the hero. 𝗒𝐭 was terrified, hoping for a break in the fighting to run. Then the car started lifting that they were hiding behind. 𝗒𝐭 bundled Izuku in her arms and dashed for the alley. 𝗵𝗲 threw an air blade to slice the car in half, sending 𝗒𝐭 to the ground. As the blade sliced her back, Izuku tumbled to the ground. 𝗒𝐭 looked and saw Izuku scrambling to her. She yelled at him to stay back. Izuku ignored her, and she felt the cold fire on her back, and her son yelled at the pain he absorbed. Before she could do anything, she felt a metal cord wrap around her ankle and yank her into the street. She was yanked to the villain as the cord wrapped around her. She was floating in between the villain and the hero, a jagged piece of metal pressed against her throat. You're going to let me go, 𝗵𝗲, or this woman is going to get killed right in front of you. Now, Magno, don't do anything to hasty. You haven't killed anyone before. You don't want to that. The Alpha and Gamma will be here soon. Don't make this worse. Then let me go and I will release her after I am free. I can't do that, Magno, you know that. Izuku, no. 𝗒𝐭 screamed as she saw her son run out of the alley and up to the villain. Let my mommy go, he shouted. Kid, stay away. 𝗵𝗲 yelled. Magno smirked and went to kick the kid away for the kid to latch onto his leg and start biting him. Magno yelled and ripped the kid off, holding him by the collar of his shirt. Dumb brat. Now I am leaving with this mother and her kid, 𝗵𝗲, or else. The jagged piece of metal pushed into 𝗒𝐭's neck, drawing blood. Please take me, just leave my son, she pleaded. I don't think so. You lady and your brat are my ticket out of here. Izuku was struggling when he reached up with 2 hands and grabbed the villain's wrist. The black-green fire erupted and engulfed the villain. Magno screamed and dropped his hostages. 𝗵𝗲 saw Magno fall to the ground with the sound of a bone breaking. Magno clutched at his hip, The child scrambled to his mom as she was trying to free herself and get to him. Bravo did not let the sudden change of events stop him. He raced over and pinned Magno to the ground, forcing his hands behind his back to get the quirk-suppressing cuffs on him. He noticed there was a large gash on the Magno's back that wasn't there before. 𝐒𝐭 freed herself and scrambled away from the villain and hero. She felt a coolness across her neck and a brief flicker of the black flame. She looked down at her son, who had his hand on her neck where she had been cut some. With Magno in custody, the other members of his team showed up to help with the cleanup. Bravo came and checked on two of them. He even asked 𝗏𝐿 about what had happened. 𝗏𝐿 told him she wasn't sure. Up until now, her son's quirk could only heal people. I understand, but we are going to need you to give a statement to the police. As he did use his quirk without authorization, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. His mother was in trouble, and he reacted. Sure enough, the police took 𝗏𝐿 and Izuku down to the station to get their statement. The police really wanted to know how an 8-year-old had broken a man's hip and gashed open his back in such a violent way. Izuku wasn't sure. He had just reacted. He didn't know how that happened. The police were not being very polite until a tall man with black hair and eyes walked in. The other officers vacated the room. Hello, Mrs. Midoriya. I am sorry for the overzealousness of my fellow officers. My name is Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Before we begin, I have a duty to inform you that my quirk is lie detector, so if you lie, I will know it. I just have one question. Do you know how your son inflicted those injuries on the villain known as Magno? No. Truth. But I have an idea. Go ahead. My son can heal people with his quirk. He does that by taking the pain of the injury into himself and burning it away. I had been hit in the back by accident by Bravo. She turned and showed him her cut shirt. Izuku healed me. She looked down sheepishly. He also may have healed our elderly neighbor, who fell and broke her hip one afternoon. It seems he may be able to inflict whatever injuries he has healed on someone else. This has never happened before. Truth. Well, ma'am, to be honest, what he did was against the law, but there is not court in the land that would every convict an 8-year-old who was just trying to save his mom. I just have one more question for the boy, if you don't mind. 𝗏𝐿 nodded. Why did you run out there, kid? I don't know, my feet just moved on their own. Truth. I have a friend that is a pro. He says that is how you can tell a true hero. Now try to stay out of trouble, kid. You have great future ahead of you. I don't want to see that get stopped because of a vigilante charge. You two are free to go. 𝗏𝐿 and Izuku walked out to find Mitsuki and Katsuki waiting for them to give them a ride home. Katsuki half scolded Izuku but then praised him for finding a way to use his quirk to fight. Mitsuki was going to scold her son, but 𝗏𝐿 placed a hand on her leg and shook her head. Izuku and Katsuki, 10 years old. Dude, your sister is going to be so scary, Izuku said as he and Katsuki walked home. Man, I thought explosion was great. My little sis can blow shit up with her mind. No sweat, not anything, just fucking boom. Good thing she isn't as explosive as you. What did you say, nerd? My point exactly. Katsuki laughed, throwing his arm around his brother. So, what are we doing today besides working out, of course? Izuku groaned. Dude, there is more to life than working out. How about video games, comic books, movies, quirk analysis? Katsuki rolled his eyes, nerd. Besides, we need to work out to make sure we get into UA. You need to be tougher so you can heal people who are really hurt, and I need to be stronger so I can cover you while you do it. Izuku knew his brother had a point, but he really wanted to watch the new All Might documentary on HeroFlix. He knew if he suggested it, he could get 𝗏𝗏 to agree. He just had to let it slip causally. They were walking down the street towards Izuku's house when suddenly Izuku felt pain, lots of pain, physical and emotional pain. It was radiating from the alley. Katsuki stopped and noticed the look on Izuku's face. How bad? Really bad. Their emotional pain is crazy high, not to mention their physical pain. I say it too. Katsuki frowned. Izuku and him had developed a system like the DEFCON system they saw in a movie once. Remember, we approach slow and see if we can do something safe. If not, we call the police and hero, okay? Yeah, I know. Izuku said. You know, you said that last time and we ended up having to run from a guy with freaking werewolf quirk, all because you had to heal the cuts on him. How was I supposed to know he would react like that? I did. Even told he had crazy eyes. You know what, never mind, let's do this. The two slipped down the alley carefully. Slowly they rounded a corner and saw a figure hunched over with their back to the two. Two messy blonde buns, a dirty beige school sweater, and plaid skirt. The hunched figure turned, and boys stared deep into the girl's cat-like eyes that were dilated in a very disconcerting fashion. They could see several bloody cuts on her arms and legs. She was gnawing on her arm. They could almost see bone. Katsuki raised his hands up, palms out towards the girl. She skittered back, swaying like something out of a horror movie. "Crazy eyes," Katsuki whispered. Izuku's eyes glowed as he looked her over. "It has something to do with her quirk, and I am guessing blood," he said. "Yes, blood, I need blood, give it to me." She dashed forward a step before stopping herself. "No, get away from me, I don't want to hurt you like Kimmy. Please, I'm a monster, but the blood was so sweet, so good. Give it to me." She leapt at the boys, only for Katsuki to let loose a small explosion that knocked her back. "All right, Izuku, this is definitely a call for backup situation. They will just throw her in an asylum 𝐒𝐽. Let me try something." "God damn it, Izuku. You better not die." Izuku stepped forward in a crouch, making himself seem smaller. He held his arms out wide. "Hey, look, I don't have anything. You want some blood? I will give you some." He extended his arm, offering her his wrist. He could see her eyes darting to 𝐒𝐽 and his wrist. "He won't do anything. Come on, take a drink." She scampered forward, grabbing his wrist. "Izuku," 𝐒𝐽 whispered. Izuku just held his hand out to the girl. He watched as she opened her mouth, revealing sharp canines. Slowly, she bit into his wrist. Izuku winced but said nothing as she started to suck at the wound. He could hear her moan some, causing him to blush. He placed his other hand on her back. She flinched but didn't break contact. The white flame erupted over her. Izuku grimaced in pain. When the flame engulfed the girl, she yelled and fell back, grabbing at her head. Izuku did the same. 𝐒𝐽 went to rush to his brother, but Izuku yelled at him to stay back. Katsuki saw the familiar black flames erupt around his brother, but then he was white flames. He even saw a red flame erupt around Izuku's head before they all turned to black flames and went out. Izuku was huffing, holding his head. The girl sat there before she started to stand up. Katsuki got in front of Izuku, palms out. When he saw the girl's eyes, they were normal size. He saw emotions flickering across her face. The girl looked at the two boys, then fell to her knees crying. Izuku got to his feet. 𝐒𝐽 looked at him over his shoulder. "What was with those red flames?" "He head was damaged. I think that is what that was. You can tell Auntie Inko you can absorb brain damage. Leave me out of that." The boys turned their attention to the girl. Izuku moved forward. "Hey, is that better?" The girl just looked up. "Yes, oh God, yes. What did you do?" "I took your pain in and healed it." "Why did you do that?" "'Cause that is what heroes do." "Do you have somewhere you can go? Do you need help?" The girl sniffled. "I don't want to go home. They do things to me there. I need blood for my quirk, they won't give me any." "And you need it to stay sane?" Izuku said. The girl nodded. "I tried to use animal blood, but they stopped me and locked me in my room. Then one day at school, my friend Kimmy cut herself and I lost control. I don't know what happened. I don't even know how long ago it was or how long I have been out here. But I feel like myself now. Please help me," she pleaded. Izuku looked at Katsuki, who just sighed. "We should take her to your house. Auntie is home, right?" "Yeah, my mom is." "Okay, let's take her there, then I can call my dad." "Is your dad a cop?" the girl asked Katsuki. "Worse, lawyer." Izuku smiled at the girl. "My name is Izuku Midoriya, and this is Katsuki Bakugo." The girl wiped her eyes with her dirty sweater. "Himiko, Toga." "Well, Toga, let's take you to my place so we can get you some food and clean clothes," Izuku said. "Will you mom be mad?" "A little, but not at you, mostly at me, but I promise she won't hurt you and 𝐒𝐽. Katsuki's dad is a really good lawyer. He will know what to do." The three kids exited the alley and made their way towards Izuku's home. Inko Midoriya was a reasonable woman. Her husband, who had been going back and forth overseas, was finally coming home to stay. His son, though prone to rash actions, they came from a place of caring. His brother had grown and changed so much after the hospital incident, it was like she had two sons. Mitsuki felt the same way. She knew it was impossible to totally stop Izuku, but they had been curbing his actions and she felt they were in a good place. Then they came home with one Himiko, Toga. Inko immediately recognized that Izuku had healed the poor thing, and the way Himiko had cried when 𝐭 offered her a shower and a promise to not call her parents or the police right away until after she heard the story. Well, it broke 𝐭's heart. Then as the Himiko was in the shower, and 𝐭 had put the poor thing's clothes to wash, she sat down and listened to Izuku's story as Katsuki had stepped onto the balcony to call his dad. 𝐭 listened to the whole thing, calmly stood up and walked to her husband's study, retrieving the bottle of whiskey hidden in his desk. Poured herself a drink, calmly downed it in one gulp, doing so again with the second. She then poured a third and without a hint of emotion, which terrified Izuku. Now let me get this straight. You decided to go into an alley and not only let Himiko drink your blood, but then you decided to heal her without her consent. Then you figured out that you could absorb whatever madness was affecting her, and you decided to absorb that as well. But Mom, he interjected. Izuku Midoriya, I am not finished. You will know when I am. You will also know when I want you speak. Izuku shut his mouth and just nodded. Katsuki heard that part and decided that the patio needed every ounce of his attention as he saw the specter of death inside the house and said, "Not today. You did this not knowing what would happen to you or her. Or if you could even heal this once you took it into yourself. Now Izuku Midoriya, when did this all become a good idea in your mind?" "I can't really say," he said meekly. "Katsuki Bakugo," she yelled. Katsuki winced and poked his head inside. "Yes, aunt. At what point did you suggest that maybe the two of you should call a hero or the police?" As soon as she turned around and we could see what was happening, auntie. "You may continue admiring the patio." "Yes, ma'am, thank you, ma'am." Katsuki did exactly that. "Interesting. Do you have a counterpoint, Izuku Midoriya?" Izuku winced as she was continuing to use his given name. "No, but..." She just silenced him with a look as she took a sip of her drink. "It is obvious that Ms. Toga needs help, and luckily you were able to provide it, without causing any apparent harm to yourself. After we handle this situation, you are grounded for 2 months. Izuku began to protest, but quickly thought better of it. "There will be no hero journals, no watching battles, no television, no internet, no video games, no watching the new All Might documentary. Instead, you will read books that I assign to you and will write me book reports on every single one. You will clean the house. If you use your quirk at any time during this period, you will have your punishment extended 1 month if not longer. Your allowance will be forfeited during this time as it will be donated to the charity mission downtown. You will be allowed to train with Katsuki at his home gym only. I will inform your aunt and uncle of your punishment. Now the only words out of your mouth better be 'Yes, Mom.'" "Yes, Mom," he said, defeated. "Oh, cell phone." She held out her hand. He handed it over. He saw her going into the settings and locking out everything but text messaging and phone calls. She then handed it back. "Understand, Izuku, that the fact you want so desperately to help those in need is not a bad thing, but you are not only jeopardizing your future but Katsuki's as well. Not to mention all the other people in the world that you will not be able to help. And you are jeopardizing your health as well." "Katsuki." He stuck his head in again. "Is your dad on his way?" "Yes, auntie." "Good, come here." Katsuki walked over. 𝐭 dug into her purse and pulled out money. "Take this and Izuku and go down and pick up 2 large pizzas, salad and cinnamon balls, as well as some soda. The 2 of you are to go and come right back, understood?" "Yes, auntie," he replied. 𝐭 brought him into a loving hug. "You're a good boy, Katsuki. Keep looking after your idiot brother." Katsuki smiled and hugged her back. "Always." "Good, now get out of here. I can hear the water turning off and want to talk to Himiko in private." The 2 boys left as 𝐭 went and knocked on the door. "Himiko, I have some clothes for you to wear. I would like you to open the door so I can check for any other injuries. I am a nurse. If you don't want to, it's okay." Slowly, she opened the door some. "Are the boys here?" "No, it's just us, dear. I sent them to get us pizza for dinner. Is that okay?" "Yes, that sounds really good." Himiko opened the door and 𝐭 stepped in. As 𝐭 looked over the girl, she could tell that she was very undernourished and very frightened. 𝐭 saw some old marks on her back from what looked like a belt or such. "Did your family do this, Himiko?" 𝐭 said in a soft voice. Himiko tried to hold her voice together. "Yes, when they found out I was sneaking out to drink blood from animals, they did that. Sometimes they would lock me in the closet for weeks." "Why did they not like you drinking blood?" "They said it wasn't normal. They said that I didn't need it, but..." Himiko started crying as she turned to look at 𝐭. "But I do. If I don't, then my mind gets all weird and I hear this voice that tells me to do bad things. I don't want to do them, but I need the blood. Does that make me bad? 𝐭𝐽𝐻 gently wiped the girl's tears. No, sweetie, that makes your parents bad. You need blood just as much as people need water. It is just part of you, and they should have never done that to you, sweetie. I promise that I will do everything in my power to make sure that it never happens again, okay? Himiko started crying. She moved forward like she wanted a hug from 𝐭𝐽𝐻 but was afraid to ask. 𝐭𝐽𝐻 just pulled the crying girl in and held her while she cried. Eventually, Himiko settled down and dressed in some of Izuku's old clothes. By the time boys came back, they walked in with Masaru. Hello, 𝐭𝐽𝐻. Katsuki filled me in somewhat, he said as he entered the house, spotting the nervous young girl. Hi, you must be Himiko. Do not worry about anything right now, just eat some food and we can talk afterwards. Himiko nodded. Izuku walked over to her and smiled. He extended his hand, which she took a little shyly as he led her over to the food, encouraging her to get as much as she wanted. Even Katsuki was doing his best to keep his more explosive tendencies in check to avoid startling her. For the boys, this was just another evening meal. For Himiko, it was what she had dreamed of. No yelling or scornful stares. She was doubly surprised when Masaru pulled a jug of pig's blood from a bag. I asked him to pick it up in case you were thirsty, Bakugo said. I remember you saying that you were using animal blood before your family stopped you. Would you like some? 𝐭𝐽𝐻 asked her. Is it really okay? Himiko responded. Wordlessly, 𝐭𝐽𝐻 went and pulled out a mug and poured Himiko some and set it down in front of the girl. I promise, Himiko, it is just fine. Himiko bit her lip, thinking about what to do. Maybe it was some sort of trap. Maybe they were going to do something once she did drink it. But then she thought of what Mrs. Midoriya had said and what Izuku had done for her. With a nervous glance, she took the cup and had a drink. There were no looks of disgust or any reaction at all. Everyone just kept doing what they were doing apart from Mrs. Midoriya. Is that okay, or would you like me to heat it up some? Himiko was in absolute shock. It took her a moment, and with tears in the corner of her eyes. If you could heat it up just a little, that would be nice. But if it is too much, I can drink it just like this. Nonsense. 𝐭𝐽𝐻 took the mug and heated it up some in the microwave before returning it to the girl. When the meal finished, they moved to the living room so Masaru could talk with Himiko. After listening to everything, Masaru sighed and looked over at 𝐭𝐽𝐻. Well, Masa? We can get her parents on neglect and child abuse, possible criminal charges for the denying her blood and causing a psychotic episode. I am going to make a phone call as we need to find out what happened when you attacked Kimmy. We should be able to argue insanity regardless due to the actions of your parents, but, Himiko, it will require us going to the police. But don't worry, I will be there with you. I will make sure you are not taken back to your parents until an investigation is completed. They will probably put you in foster care while that happens. Can't she just stay with Izuku and I? I don't want her to put into the system. 𝐭𝐽𝐻 said, before she turned her attention to Himiko. That is only if you want it, dear. If I could stay here for a while, that would be nice. None of you look at me funny. Himiko said. Well, then we should get this started as soon as possible. My car is downstairs if you two ladies are ready. 𝐭𝐽𝐻 nodded and using her quirk pulled her coat and one of Izuku's hoodies from the closet. She handed the jacket to Himiko. Here, dear, put this on. It can get cold in those police stations. Izuku, remember you are grounded, so I want you in bed early. Katsuki and Izuku walked over, and to Himiko's surprise they both gave her a hug. It will all be okay, Izuku said. Don't worry about anything, Fangs. My dad is the best, Katsuki said. Himiko smiled at the Fangs comment, before turning to the adults and walking towards them. I am ready. The brothers watched them leave. When the silence came, Katsuki smacked Izuku upside the back of his head before quickly hugging him. Dude, you are so dumb sometimes, but man, I wouldn't trade you for anything, except a clone of Mizuki. Izuku smiled and hugged Katsuki back. Alright, I am going home because you are grounded, not me, and there is that new documentary on Hero Flix. Dude. I agree we did the right thing, but Izuku, listen to me. If you keep doing this, you are going to get caught and then there will be trouble. I want us to be heroes together, bro, but I will do it without you. It will suck, but I will. Don't make me do that, okay? Izuku nodded his head. I get it, Kachin, I will be better, I promise. Good, now I am out of here. Later, man. Izuku sat there in the apartment for a moment before beginning to clean up and heading to his room. He needed to find a way to be able to use his quirk to help people without getting in trouble. He also needed medical knowledge. He pulled out his homework first, though. No way he could even be a hero if he didn't pass math class. His mom did not come home till the evening the following day, and when she did, she had Himiko in tow. It had been decided that Himiko would stay with them pending investigation. Himiko cried on Izuku's shoulder, then she told him that Kimi was hurt but not severely. That Kimi, after learning of Himiko's quirk and the need for blood, she had forgiven Himiko on the spot. Kimi's parents even decided to not press charges against Himiko, but to instead go after Himiko's parents for monetary compensation. It was an adjustment in the house as they moved Himiko into the spare bedroom and saw to her needs. Himiko kept waiting for the dream to end or the other shoe to drop, but for a little while at least it was pure fantasy. Himiko had to attend quirk counseling as well as therapy. Izuku had to go with her to the quirk counselor due to bad past experiences. Izuku welcomed it and was fascinated watching the counselor work with Himiko and her quirk. The fantasy didn't end but instead hit a snag when after 1 month Himiko was informed that she would have to go to court for the case against her parents, and they would be looking to place her in a permanent foster care. Luckily for Himiko, that was when Hisashi came home. The man scared Himiko at first. He was easily 6 feet 2 inches and incredibly broad. Himiko found him intimidating until she saw him smile. It was like the smile that Izuku had. It relaxed her. After Inko and him had a meeting, they had sat down with Himiko to ask her if she wanted to stay with them as their foster daughter. Himiko cried for 5 minutes before she could say yes. Himiko sat in her room on the bed looking at the bedding that had been bought for her. The clothes that they had bought her, the plushie, the slippers, the robe. These people had come out of nowhere. First, Izuku and Katsuki had come down that alley and risked their lives to help her. Second, Inko took her in and listened to Himiko's story and hugged her. Third, Matsuo had been true to his word and was fighting tooth and nail for her. Fourth, Hisashi had come home to find a strange, potentially dangerous girl in his home and had wanted her to stay. It was a lot. It was almost too much. She opened her journal and wrote her feeling down for the therapist. It wasn't quite the fairy tale as someone had not waved a magic wand to make everything instantly better, but it was a proper one. A family had come in and changed her life. They were fighting to make her life better for no other reason that they believed in her. Someone had put their faith in her, and she would make sure that it was not a mistake on her part. She was nervous. She was meeting Mitsuki and Mizuki today for the first time. She didn't know what to expect, but according to Izuku, Auntie Mitsuki was like Bakugo, loud but had great heart. And Mizuki was seemingly more subdued like Masaru but had recently discovered she could blow things up with her mind. That is insane, Himiko had said. I know, right? Izuku had replied. Adjusting and rebuilding. Normally Izuku's punishment would have been terrible torture for him. Well, it still was, but the presence of Himiko and then the return of his father had made things a lot more bearable. After the first month Himiko was with them, it was decided that she would go to school with the boys as that way she had friends pre-established. The first day Himiko was incredibly nervous. It went okay. The main incident had been when of course the topic of quirks had come up and Himiko had summoned up the courage to share hers. The reaction was of course varied, but the loudest came from a group that decided to try and bully the girl. This angered Izuku to no ends. Normally a non-aggressive child by nature, seeing the effect it immediately had on Himiko's mental state caused him to leap from his seat in the cafeteria and throw punches. Katsuki was surprised by this action for exactly 1 second, and he enthusiastically joined in. When a girl had jumped on Izuku's back though, Himiko knew that the boys were fighting for her, and she would fight for them. The resulting suspension for everyone was met with satisfactory approval by all parents involved. Himiko's therapist did not approve of her method but understood the girl's desire to fight for those that were fighting for her. After her second 1RST day it went smoother. To put it simply, it went spectacular, at least in Himiko's world. 2 girls, Reiko and Cami, had decided that not only was Himiko's quirk cool, but that Himiko should be their friend, and they were not taking no for an answer. Cami had fawn-colored hair and brown eyes and seemed rather fond of slang, which made Himiko giggle. Her quirk was glamour. It allowed Cami to create illusions. Reiko had pale gray hair and blue eyes. Her quirk poltergeist allowed her to levitate objects and even herself. The boys watched as the tsunami that was Cami swept over Himiko and carried her away. After 1 week the trio were inseparable. 2 weeks, not a chance. 3 best friends for life. Himiko relaxed, and the boys got to see her personality just bubble up and shine. Of course, there were those that would tease or try to disparage Himiko due to her quirk, but she didn't care anymore. She had friends the fairy tale may end someday, but today was not the day. Izuku, after a long talk with both his parents at the end of his punishment, had petitioned them to allow him to volunteer at the very mission his allowance had been going to. He needed to help people, he just wanted to help, so he figured that this would be the best way he could. His mom agreed that the two of them would donate time to the mission. She could donate her nursing skills with Izuku as her assistant. To say that it tested Izuku's resolve was an understatement. He saw so much in the way of injury and mental pain. He wanted to reach on and take it all, heal everyone, but he knew that wasn't allowed to. But at least working with his mother, he was learning how to treat things without his power. He was able to provide aid and get that release he wanted. One evening he was cleaning up and a fight had broken out in the sleeping room. The adults had gone to deal with it when a young boy came stumbling into the kitchen clutching his stomach. Blood was seeping out between his fingertips and pooling on the floor. The boy's purple eyes locked onto Izuku as he managed a weak cry for help before collapsing. Izuku's cry for help was much louder. He grabbed a clean towel and immediately ran over to apply pressure like his mother had told him. He watched in horror as the towel was soaking a deep crimson. Over and over, he screamed for help. One of the workers looked in at the scene and immediately ran to find some aid. The boy gasped and blood bubbled from his mouth. He wasn't going to make it. It took Izuku 1 second before his hands erupted in white fire over the wound. Izuku let out a strangled cry as he now knew what it was like to be stabbed. He would not recommend it. 0/10. He felt and saw the healing work. He immediately fell back as the white fire engulfed him, healing the pain. Izuku lied there panting. He looked over at the boy to see his breathing steady out and his eyes flutter. It was then he saw a girl with green vines for hair holding onto a woman with similar hair staring at him. The little girl ran to him while her mother raced to the other boy. The girl grabbed his hands and stared deeply into his eyes. There was a twinkle in her eyes as she stared at him. "Glory to the Lord, for he in his infinite wisdom has brought you here this night to save the life of his wayward sheep," she said. Izuku looked at the girl. He didn't know what to say. The look in her eyes and the passion in her voice caught him off guard. Thankfully, Inko came busting in with a med kit. Her eyes immediately fell on the boy asleep on the ground and then to her son, who sheepishly looked at her. Freeing his hand from the girl, he held them up in defense. "Mom, before you say anything, he was bleeding out. I applied pressure and everything like you said. If I didn't do something, he was going to die." Inko walked over to the sleeping boy and checked his breathing and pulse. What was his injury? Izuku winced. Knife wound to his stomach. Internal bleeding, his lungs were filling with blood. He couldn't breathe. Inko looked over at her son. "Good job, Izuku. I know you called for help and tried to triage first, so you're not in trouble today." Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The woman walked over to Inko. "You must buy Mrs. Midoriya. I am Seinaru Shiozaki. I finance this facility. Thank you for your quick action tonight, and praise God that you have instilled such a selfless nature into your son. I am not sure what his quirk is, but it is a true blessing from on high. To heal by fire is truly a miracle to behold." "Well, I thank you for your praise, Mrs. Shiozaki. You must understand something, that for my son to heal someone, he must take the pain unto himself first. So as of tonight, my son knows what it is like to be stabbed. So not only does he heal, he takes their pain unto himself. But God's gifts also are truly wonderful to behold." Izuku watched the conversation in confusion, till the young girl caught his attention again. "Ibra Shiozaki," she said, extending her hand. "Is that true, you take on their pain to heal them?" Yeah, essentially. I can see what the injury is, the pain, and then I take it and burn it away. Are you part angel?" "No, my mom is right there, and my dad works for a support company," Izuku responded. He noticed the girl seemed a little sad. "I wish my quirk could heal, but I know that I have the quirk God has bestowed upon me for a reason. I just need to figure that part out," she said, seeming a little sad. "What is your quirk?" "Vines," she said as her hair began to move and extend some. "Wow, which is a good quirk. You could be a great rescue hero or just any type of hero." "Can they grow bigger?" The little girl nodded. "Then that's amazing. I wonder what factors into their growth. Is there a way to make them grow faster? How much can you lift with them?" It would be great for capture, and not to mention rescue. Izuku felt a tug on his sleeve from his mom's quirk. Dang it, I was muttering again. I could be a hero, she said, her eyes wide. Are you going to be a hero? I think you would be an amazing hero. Yup, me and my brother and maybe Himiko are going to be heroes together. He responded with a dazzling smile. Mama, can I be a hero? The woman smiled at her daughter and the interaction the two children were having. Of course, my darling, if it is God's will, then it shall be. She then turned back to Inko. Now, Mrs. Midoriya, let us talk about Izuku's education. I think I would like to sponsor him into Somei Elementary. Inko blinked. Well, that is something I would have to discuss with my husband and also with Izuku. Please think it over. Here's my card. Call me when you reach a decision. I hear the emergency vehicles arriving. We should prepare for their questions. Does your son do this often? The healing of people, I mean. Yes, he does. We are trying to curb him doing it with his quirk, so he doesn't get in trouble for illegal quirk usage, which is why we started to volunteer here. I wanted to teach him some first aid treatments and help him scratch that itch, so to speak. I see that would be terrible. Even if you reject my offer of Somei, would you be amenable to me reaching out to an acquaintance of mine? They are a former hero with an immensely powerful healing quirk. She may be able to offer you and Izuku guidance in these matters and help him develop his healing skills. Yes, that would be most helpful, thank you, Mrs. Shiozaki. Think nothing of it. I would also like to request that, if it is possible, that maybe we could arrange some playdates between our children. Ibra seems quite taken with him. Inko looked over and saw the two green-haired children talking and smiling. I think we can do that. The door soon opened, and a couple of police officers and a paramedic came into the room. The rest of the evening was spent answering questions and filing reports, and of course for Izuku a conversation about quirk usage. Ibra was sad to see her friend leave, but brightened up when her mom told her that they would see each other again. The next morning, Sainara woke early, set about answering various emails and ensuring their company would continue to function. Before she decided to make a call. Hello, Chio. How are you this morning? I am doing well. It is another wonderful day. I am calling you because I have come across a young man with a rather potent healing quirk. He seems to be a good boy, but according to his mother, he has a strong desire to help people, and it may derail his desire to be a hero. The boy heals people by taking their pain into himself and burning it away. God is wonderful. Meanwhile, Bakugo was pinching the bridge of his nose, looking at his brother, while Himiko was giving him an exasperated look. So let me get this straight. Last night at the shelter where your mom took you to keep you out of trouble, you had to heal a kid our age who had been stabbed? Yes. That's it. You are not allowed to leave the house anymore without me. I am going to join you at the shelter. Me too. Himiko said. We should go, we are going to be late for school. Did you get grounded again? His brother asked. No, actually I called for help and tried first aid, but he was going to die, so Izuku shrugged his shoulders as they made their way out. By the way, getting stabbed is a 0 out of 10. I would not recommend it. Katsuki started to laugh at that. Thanks, I can take it off the bucket list now, nerd. Promise you will help me keep an eye on this delinquent Himiko. I promise. Even though without him I wouldn't be sane right now, I get what you are saying. Wait, when did I become the delinquent? Izuku said. How many conversations have you had with the police or a pro about illegal quirk usage? Izuku was about to try and defend himself, but in the end, fair point. But on the plus side, I meet someone else that may want to be a hero as well. Of course you did, the other two said. -2 days later, as the trio was going over their homework when his father walked in carrying a rather large fried chicken meal. As the kids got up excitedly, they saw Inko walk in with a boy about their age with purple hair and eyes. Izuku immediately recognized him. Oh, it's you, he said. He looked over at Katsuki and Himiko. That's the boy I healed. Katsuki saw the boy had a small duffel bag and that no parents were standing behind him. Katsuki smiled and said, Welcome to the island of misfit toys. Enjoy your stay, we have cookies. What kind of cookies? The boy said in a shy voice. Himiko pieced it together as well. Chocolate chip, but you have to eat dinner first and take a bath. Also brush your teeth after the cookies. Not before. For out of 10 would not try again, Izuku said with a smile. Inko's heart swelled at how the children were reacting. Kids, this is Hitoshi Shinso, he is going to be living with us. Katsuki, hey dude, what's your quirk? The boy looked sad and looked down at the floor. I can take over people's minds. That is awesome, Katsuki said. Wow, so cool, Izuku seconded. That would be pretty good for a hero? Himiko said. That is so right, he could end a hostage situation in like a second, Izuku said. Katsuki was surprised Izuku hadn't bombarded the dude with questions, but the way Izuku was bouncing he could tell he was holding it back but barely. You don't think that's a villain's quirk? The kid said with a look of fear in his eyes. Hell no dude, I blow stuff up with my sweat. Katsuki yelled with a vicious grin on his face. I have to drink blood for my quirk, Himiko said, standing a little behind Izuku. I can heal people, but I have to absorb their pain, Izuku said. And dude, my little sister can make things explode with her mind. Hitoshi was sure how to respond. They didn't think his quirk was evil. He was sure they said he could be a hero, and someone could blow something up with their mind. That's insane. All three responded at the same time, I know, right? Over the course of the night, it was confirmed that Hitoshi was coming to live with them because, like Himiko, he had terrible parents that had abused him. After all, he had a villainous quirk. Masaru was on the case, and the family would be moving into a house soon. Much to Katsuki's happiness, it was going to be near his house. As the kids were off in their room convincing Hitoshi to use his quirk on them, and laughing, Hisashi wrapped his arms around his wife. You know, when we talked about more children, this isn't exactly what I had in mind. I know, Hisashi, but, like Himiko, I couldn't just let him go into the system, Inko said. But I promise I will make it up to you tonight after they are asleep. Because a good man deserves everything. Hisashi's eyes widened. Everything. Everything, my darling. Inko turned and pulled her husband's head towards her and whispered seductively, everything. Hisashi giggled. Later, Hitoshi joined the trio at school. Luckily this time there was no fight on the first day. The other students learned their lesson after Himiko. Kami and Reiko were welcoming to him as well, though Hitoshi found the girls' energy when together to be exhausting, not to mention that Katsuki and Izuku had dragged him into their hero training. It wasn't long before Kami and Reiko joined them along with Himiko. They had become quite the gang. Izuku had told his parents that he didn't want to transfer schools, that he wanted to go to school with his friends, and that it was more important to him that they be together. Ibra and Izuku started to have their play dates, as in she would come over and hang out with the strange family. The group adjusted to her strange mannerisms. Katsuki soon began to tease his brother about his girlfriend, coming over as the girl would be close to Izuku at any chance she got. As interesting as that all was, it was by far not the most interesting thing to happen over the course of the next few months. The most interesting thing over the past few months. Inko had told Izuku that he wasn't going to school on one Tuesday, but she didn't tell him why, only that there was someone that they had to meet and that it was especially important. His mother fussed over his clothes before settling on an outfit for him. He was loaded into the car and driven off to his destination. Izuku had tried to guess and get his mom to tell him, but she wouldn't say anything. Then the most wonderful thing ever happened. Izuku found himself in front of the UA, the top hero school in Japan. As they approached the gate, the pro hero Snipe was there, and he was waiting for them. He even signed Izuku's hero notebook and gave them visitor passes and their pictures. Izuku couldn't wait to tell his brother about this. Snipe guided them through the school, answering all the questions the excited 10-year-old was throwing out. The pro hero would smile, laugh, and answer the endless stream till they stopped in front of the door, and he bid them goodbye. Then the door opened, and standing in front of Izuku was his second most favorite hero of all time behind All Might, of course. The youthful heroine, Recovery Girl. He got his second autograph that day. The retired hero was incredibly surprised that he was such a fan. Izuku had been on the verge of fainting this entire time, but then she said it. I hear you have an amazing quirk. Why don't you tell me about it? Izuku fainted in his mother's arms. Recovery Girl was concerned till Inko smiled at her. I am amazed he lasted this long. He will wake up in a minute. Izuku, true to form, woke up and apologized to the hero. Chio smiled at the excitable lad. Now, do you think you can tell me about your quirk? Izuku took a deep breath. I can see people's pain, and I can understand it. When that happens, I can heal it. But to do that, I have to draw the pain into myself with my white fire. That heals them. Then I must burn it away to heal myself. I can also somehow store the pain I have absorbed and give it to someone else. So, what do you see in me? She asked. You have severe arthritis and some knee problems. He told her, his eyes were glowing green. Could you help that? If you let me? He looked at his mom, and she nodded her head in approval. Izuku reached out and took the hero's hand, and she saw the white fire spread out and cover her body. It was cool and soothing. She then felt arthritis and knee problems just disappear. The boy released her hand, and then she saw black fire come from him before he opened his eyes and smiled. Remarkable. Why are the fires different? I think the white is the healing. If I get a cut, the white fire heals it. The black fire burns it whatever I take it away, like your arthritis or cancer. You can heal cancer? I don't know if I can do it all the time. I can also see when people are not right in the head, and I can heal that also, but I only did that once. My mom told me not to do that again. Recovery girl leaned forward. I think you need to explain that more. Izuku recounted what had happened with Himiko in as much detail as he could. That fire was red. I don't know what that means, but according to Kachin, the red only came out when I was healing myself. I had absorbed her madness. I think I can understand why your mom doesn't want you to do that again. Would you mind if I talk to your mom in private for a bit? You could just have a seat outside. Once the door closed, Inko gave her full attention to the retired heroine. The recovery girl offered. Yes, please. They sat in silence till a cup of tea was sitting before both. Mrs. Midoriya, may I call you Inko? Yes. Then please call me Chio. I am going to be honest. Your son has the most terrifying and wonderful healing gift that I have ever seen. Inko's eyes widened at the heroine's declaration, but she could understand why the statement was being made. He can heal any wound if he can withstand it himself. He can heal cancer, he can heal or at the very least grant mental stability to someone. He does all this without any medical knowledge or training. For the longest time, I was considered to have the most powerful known healing quirk. What a lot of people don't know is that I accelerate a person's natural healing at the cost of their stamina. So, if an exhausted but critical hero were brought in here, I could do nothing for them with my quirk. Your son could. My lord, the possibilities are insane. I understand, Chio. Izuku wants to be a hero. Not just a healing hero, but one on the battlefield. He has almost no self-control when it comes to healing someone or the desire to do so. He is getting better, but because he can diagnose someone if he sees they are not going to make it, he acts. I know that he can heal the damage he absorbs, but I worry that if he absorbs too much and it kills him before he can heal himself. His friend/brother Katsuki wants to be a hero also so he can defend Izuku while he heals people, and there are others who are gravitating around him. Himiko, Kami, Reiko, Ibra, and Hitoshi. There is a theory that a person's quirk affects their personality, that a person with an eating quirk will have a problem with overeating. A person with super strength will have a desire to lift weights. Or a person with a healing quirk will be drawn to those that need healing or will seek them out. That is the case when I was a little girl. I had the same impulse to heal everyone I could. It wasn't till some tragedy almost happened that I was able to rein it in. But what I fear is that Izuku doesn't have that fear, because he will know that at least the person was healed. It is a very selfless attitude, and it can be extremely dangerous. I don't know if he would even draw the line between a hero and a villain. I think he would heal the villain to prevent them from dying. So, Chio, what do we do? I want to train him. I cannot let someone like this with this ability slip by. It is selfish, I know, but he could be such a boon for not only the hero society but for everyone. If you let me train him, I can help with his medical knowledge and teach him techniques for advanced triage, so maybe he won't resort to his quirk. I will even sponsor him for the recommendation exam here in the UA. I can promise that I will make sure he gets a medical degree out of all this. I think that we should get him certified as EMT in the meantime so that he has permission to use his quirk to avoid him getting in further trouble. Thank you, Chio. I agree with you. But if at any time he no longer wants to be a hero, then I would expect you to honor his wishes, though I find that highly unlikely. I will agree to that. We can start with some after-school training a few days a week, but I would like to have him on Saturdays for the day. As long as he can still be a 10-year-old kid, I can agree. He may be willing to give up his childhood, but I won't let him. Agreed. Oh, dude, so you are going to get trained in by the recovery girl? And you get to take the recommendation exam? God damn it, bro, Katsuki yelled. Do not take the Lord's name in vain. Fine, but do you guys get it? We are going to have to train even harder to keep up with this nerd. Or hear me out, we can just sleep in instead, Hitoshi said. Yeah, Baku, if we train any more, I am tots going to hurl. What about like our chill and party time? Cammy said. If training more means I can keep Izuku safe, then I will, Himiko said, shooting a smile at Izuku. I have no desire to be left behind, though I must agree the thought of even more strenuous exercise is not appealing if it will increase our chances of attending the most prestigious of schools, then we must forego some things for that opportunity, Reiko added as a cupcake floated off the tray to her. Well said, Reiko. The Lord has placed a challenge in front of us and we must not seek to ignore it, but we must deal with it head-on. God only gives us what we can handle. Ibra said. So, sleeping in is off the table? You're damn right it is, Katsuki hugged Izuku. Dude, I am so proud of you. I know you will make me proud. Thanks, Kachin. Izuku looked at all his friends with a smile. He was surrounded by so many that loved him and cared. He wouldn't let them down. Next year, Izuku was doing great. His studying with Recovery Girl was going great, and he was almost ready for his EMT exam. His family had moved into a new house, which was 2 doors down from Katsuki and Mizuki, who was starting to be a regular fixture in the Midoriya household. The little girl had her big brother wrapped around her finger, and now that Izuku lived so close he couldn't tell her no when she wanted to come over with him. The little girl would immediately glomp Izuku and follow him around. The house was always lively and full of kids running around outside the house. Inko couldn't have been happier. She had her husband and 8 kids, rowdy boys and crazy girls. Cammy, Reiko, and Ibra were over as much as they could be. She would come home to find them all studying in the living room or on the couch watching movies. She would smirk at how Cammy would tease Katsuki all the time, or how Reiko and Hitoshi would be huddled next to each other watching horror videos on the computer. Ibra and Himiko would always be around Izuku with Mizuki bouncing between him and Katsuki. Izuku was sitting in the medical ward with a lollipop in his mouth. Recovery Girl had gone to talk to Nizu, leaving the boy alone. All the students had gone home, so Izuku was just waiting for her to return when he heard the door open. Turning expecting to see a member of the faculty, instead he was greeted by a skeletal blonde-haired man with piercing blue eyes. Oh God, Izuku said as he jumped off his chair. Sorry about that, but you scared me. Can I help you, sir? Well, hello, young man, I am looking for Recovery Girl. She went to a meeting with the principal. You are more than welcome to wait, mister. Yagi, and you are? Sorry, sir. Izuku bowed. Izuku Midoriya. You seem rather young for a student there, Midoriya. I am not a student, sir. I am studying under Recovery Girl. Yes, she has said something about taking on a protege. I don't know if I would go that far. Izuku responded. Before Izuku could continue, the man began to cough up blood at an alarming rate. The surprised boy ran over, offering him tissues, and guided him to a medical bed to sit. Izuku looked at him and stepped back in shock and some horror. Oh my God, Mr. Yagi, how are you still standing? You are missing a lung, your stomach, esophagus damage, and most of your intestines. You are undernourished, and your remaining lung only works at 75%. The scar tissue alone is insane. Mr. Yagi looked at the boy with shock till he noticed the boy's glowing eyes. Must be his quirk. How did that happen? I used to be a hero until a fierce battle with my most dangerous opponent left me like this. Really, what was your hero's name? I don't recognize you, and I know a lot of heroes, and I mean a lot. It is not important. What about you are going to be a healing hero? Izuku could tell that the man didn't want to talk about his hero work. It was then suddenly the man grabbed at his chest and he began to have a seizure. Izuku yelled but ran over and hit the alarm button. Emergency, emergency. Seizure event code, blue. I repeat, seizure event code, blue. He called over the emergency system. He ran over and pulled the heart monitor system over and began to feverishly hook the man up. Mr. Egi, can you hear me? You are having a seizure. Help is on the way. Izuku's eyes lit up as he looked over the man. Your intestines are rupturing. Something is wrong. This isn't natural. Your organs are vibrating and breaking. Code black, code black. The man's blue eyes locked onto Izuku's. Izuku could see fear, intense fear, and regret. This man was terrified in a way Izuku had never seen. The way the fear intermingled with the regret. It was hard for Izuku to separate the two. It was as if the man had failed the world. Don't be afraid, Mr. Yagi, because I am here. The man's eyes widened, and his convulsions paused before they started to get worse. Izuku started to panic. What was this man's regret? Why was he so afraid? It was a failure. The man had failed at something. Izuku grabbed his phone and fired off a text to his mom. It said one word. Sorry, Mr. Yagi. Do not waste your second chance and tell my mom I love her. Izuku pressed both his palms on the man's chest and white fire erupted with such force that it knocked over machines and the window exploded. Recovery girl and Nizu stepped out of the elevator to see the door to the medical office explode in white fire. The heroine's heart dropped upon hearing the scream. Midnight and Eraserhead rounded the corner on the opposite end. Aizawa, shut the boy down now. Shut him down. Eraserhead or Shota Aizawa rushed towards the fire, ready to try and push through, when it suddenly stopped. Shota heard a body hit the floor. He tore into the room to see the boy Midoriya on the floor with blood flooding out of his body. Midoriya household. Himiko and Hitoshi were in their rooms when they heard a heartbreaking scream and the sound of dishes crashing from the living room. They burst out and looked at each other. "Oh," they said and bolted downstairs. They ran into the living room to find Inko on the floor, her phone in her hand. Himiko picked it up and her heart dropped. "Izuku, sorry." "Izuku. Well, that was a short life. I hope that Mr. Yagi's regret was as big as I felt. Himiko and Hitoshi will have to take care of Mom. Kacchan is going to find a way to summon my spirit just so he can blow me up. But it was worth it, he will live. So accepting." "Who was that? You willingly sacrificed yourself to save someone you hardly knew, and now you accept death so calmly. I knew what would happen if I healed him, but I couldn't let him die like that. But who are you and why can't I see you? Are you sure you want to? What does that mean? What if I am an angel? Then shouldn't that be a good thing? At least according to Ibra, angels are good things. A creature that was made to worship God. But whenever God needed a punishment doled out, he would send an angel. Would you ever really want to meet an angel, a creature such as that, their existence praising God, but always with one wing dipped in blood? I never thought of that. Then again, I am not a Christian, so I guess I wouldn't know. But either way, if you are the last thing that I will talk to before I go on to the beyond, then I would like to at least see you." Suddenly Izuku felt himself standing on grass, in a vast and beautiful field ringed in cherry blossom trees. Standing before him was, for lack of a better word, beauty. I may have been male, but Izuku's mind couldn't conceive of its gender. Long flowing black hair, blue eyes, unearthly porcelain white skin, wrapped in a midnight blue robe, 2 large white wings seemingly made of a pure white light protruding from the person's back, the tips of the wings red and dripping. Well shit. Language. Sorry about that, my best friend and his mother are quite fond of swears and I have picked up on quite a few. One time they were changing a tire and managed to lose all the lug nuts in the snow. The tapestry of swears that they wove that day may still be hanging somewhere over Tokyo. The being laughed. Not the reaction I was expecting, but amusing. Truthfully, I don't know what to say, my brain is kind of grasping at straws. It is all right, Izuku. It is to be expected in this situation. Not to be rude, which means whenever someone says that they are going to be rude. But why am I here and why being you talking to me? Well, your statement is true. It is also understandable. You are here because I chose you to be. I wondered what you would do in this situation, and to my amazement, despite the constant warnings and worries of those around you, you still did what you did to save another. I find it impressive, especially for one so young. I am pleased to see my brother's lineage still carried his calling. You mean your brother is one of my ancestors? Yes, exactly. I still recall the day he fell. Not out of pride, not out of spite, but out of love. I tried to talk him out of it. I warned him that I would have to come for them at some point, but he still did it. It was beautiful. It was tragic. It was everything for which one could hope. His blood runs through you. His ideals rest inside you. It warms me. Are you an angel? I have been called that. I have been called many things. Your people called me Shinigami, Egyptians, Anubis, Greeks, Thanatos or Hades, Norse, Hell, the Jews, Azrael. Lately, I am just called Death. I am talking to the embodiment of death? Yes. For reals. Yes, he said with a smile. Okay, so what happens now? I am going to send you back. It pained me greatly to collect my brother. When I collected so many of his lines, I never saw one that reminded me of him so much. I will return you to the world, and watch what happens. Thank you, Izuku said. What else could he say? This could be a hallucination caused by his brain shutting down, or something. He honestly did not know what else to think. One question. Only one? I can entertain one. What was his name? Your brother, my ancestor? Raphael. Okay, I lied too. What is yours? You can call me Azrael, see you again, he said with a smile that was neither comforting nor intimidating. Waking up slowly, the real world found its way to Izuku. He could hear someone crying. It was distant, but it wasn't alone. There were more voices, some crying. He could hear one cursing. He could hear one closer. It was muttering. As it began to fade in more, it was not muttering, it was praying. It was like trying to swim through mud. He was trying to pull himself up through it. He could make out his mom and dad, Katsuki, and his family and Himiko. Hitoshi. As it became clear, he heard the loudest beep in his entire existence. The voices silenced, then the beep again. He heard confusion. It was still distant, and he was having trouble finding it. He heard a whisper or a desperate plea. Come back. Beep. Come back. It sounded closer. He tried to will his way toward it. Beep. Please come back. It was clearer, and it was a female. Beep, beep. That's it, Izuku, come back to us. It was so close. Beep, beep, beep. I swear if you come back, I will be by your side forever. All of us will come back to us. It was right by his head. It was being whispered into his ear. Beep, 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 beep. It fell in a rhythm. Izuku forced his eyes to open. It was painful. There, holding his hand, whispering in his ear, was 𝐈𝐵. Promise, he managed to get out. His throat hurt and burned. He saw her eyes water and her tears hit his chest. Yes, she managed. Then someone screamed. It was his mother. He saw her come into view. He was crushed by her hugs and tears. He tapped on her shoulder to get her attention. Water, he croaked. Immediately, there was a bottle in her hand being brought gingerly to his lips. Is he like undead? He heard a smack and What, he was dead and now he is awake? I know I cannot be the only one thinking it, Hitoshi said. His mother pulled back and looked at him and the monitor next to him. Izuku, is that you? Yeah, Mom, sorry if I caused any trouble. What happened? Baby, you were dead for 10 minutes, she said, her tears falling. Oh, that is all you got, you fucking asshole. Katsuki yelled. Izuku looked over at his brother's puffy red eyes and just extended his hand to him. What else do you say to that? Himiko started laughing. Then Hitoshi. Slowly the laughter spread. With help from 𝐈𝐵 and his mother, he sat up. They all slowly came over and hugged him. Soon it was a giant group hug filled with tears and love. As they all pulled away, there was Recovery Girl, Eraserhead, the blonde guy, the principal, and Vlad King. They all looked like they had seen the dead sit up and talk. Oh, wait. Slowly they entered the room and had everyone, but his parents stepped out to give them room. He could read the tension on the heroes and his parents' faces as Recovery Girls examined him and took a blood sample. The heroine was silent the whole time. It wasn't until she returned 5 minutes later that, if possible, she was even paler. I have no baseline. I have no point of reference, but all I can say is that he is perfectly healthy. All the scans show nothing abnormal, no cellular degradation, no rot, and his cells seem even better than before. I need to run tests, but I have nothing. She walked over to her desk, pulled out a bottle of whiskey that had dust on it, wiped it off, and took a long swig. I am too old for this shit. To his surprise, his mother and father took a long drink from the bottle as well. The tension was broken when Vlad King said, "Not it." "Ouch, hell no, Vlad," Eraser said. "If this kid makes it into you, he is all yours. I refuse." "Why me?" "He did call not it," the principal said. "That's bullshit," Eraser muttered. "Mr. and Mrs. Midoriya, let us talk outside for a minute. I am sure that everyone would like an update." His parents nodded, and soon it was just the principal and Mr. Yagi. Izuku looked over at Mr. Yagi. "How are you feeling?" "I should be asking that same thing of you, young Midoriya. Why did you do what you did? All your organs were rupturing. There was a vibration inside of you. It was killing you. I could tell you were afraid, and there was a regret inside you. It was so strong it felt like you had failed the world somehow. I had never felt something like that, so I thought if I could give you a second chance, then maybe you could make right whatever went wrong. You were willing to give your life to a stranger, so they could put right a wrong they had as they died. Did you know what the regret was?" "No, it was huge. It was overwhelming though. I just knew that I had to act. That I had to do it. I knew that you were going to die before help arrived. The only person that could help was me, and isn't that what heroes do? They save someone even if it costs them their life. The principal smiled. Humans are a most interesting species. I can tell you that whatever was happening in there was not natural. Someone had set up a delayed sonic attack in you. They were trying to kill you, Mr. Yagi. I don't know who you pissed off, but that was an assassination attempt. How are you so sure? The principal asked. When I first looked over Mr. Yagi, I knew he was severely damaged, but I would have picked up the internal bleeding in the initial scan. But the cascade of organ ruptures and the vibration I saw could only be caused by a sonic attack, and as I was not being affected, it had to be originating inside Mr. Yagi, hence sonic pulse delay. I imagine that if he weren't in such poor shape, it probably would not have done anything. I know it is not my business, but can I ask a question, Mr. Yagi? Of course, young Midoriya. Are you going to make it right? Whatever that regret or failure was. Yes, young Midoriya, I promise you I will. Good. Can you call my family back in? I owe them an apology. Of course, I will come to see you again. I would very much like to talk to my hero again. Mr. Yagi said with a blinding smile. Soon his room was flooded with his family. It was his brother that asked him what happened. Izuku took a deep breath. Okay, so I may have hallucinated, but I think I meet death. Down the hall. Mr. Yagi walked into a room and looked at Recovery Girl. I don't know how to say it, I don't know how, but you are completely healed. That boy absorbed all that was done to you and healed you before he died. Rest assured he did die. What happened after that is not a clue. You are in better health than ever. Your quirk levels are stronger. That boy just gave us all might again. Inko Midoriya. She sat in shocked silence, listening to her son recount the story that may have been a very detailed hallucination, but one nonetheless. It wasn't until she heard the name Raphael that she knew that it wasn't a hallucination. It was a very old story about her family that had been passed on for nearly a century and a half. Her distant relative Kara had grown up in a small village and had expected to lead a quiet life, but then the Second Quirk War erupted, throwing everything into chaos. Kara had what she thought was a minor quirk called knit. If she had the material, she could sew things together. Before the war, she had used it mainly to earn a living as a seamstress. She didn't like war or violence, but instead became part of the medical corps, where her ability became a lifesaver. Any wound could be closed with her ability. She would be one of the people who would run onto the battlefield to see if people could be saved. It didn't matter to her the danger she was putting herself in as long as she could help someone. She even treated the enemies. It was during this that she encountered an enemy, doctor, that would do the same, treating any he came across. They would cross paths numerous times. He always seemed to be there when it was the most dangerous for her and even saved her a few times. A strange friendship blossomed. When the war was coming to an end, she told him where she lived and invited him to find her when it was over. She had all but given up hope when he had shown up in the village hurt and limping. She sprang into action and helped nurse him back to health. He never left. They fell in love, got married, and had many children. Raphael said he didn't have a family and had no family name he wanted to carry, so he took Kara's instead. They were said to be deeply in love and had the greatest hearts. They opened a clinic together and built by all accounts a wonderful life filled with love and laughter. Hisashi Midoriya. He sat and listened to his resurrected son's story. Making sure he wasn't seen, he began to look up psychologists in the area to see about making Izuku an appointment. The story was far too fantastical for him to believe. After all, his son had suffered a near-death experience that was surely going to have some lasting psychological repercussions. Himiko Toga. She didn't know what to make of the tale that Izuku had told them. She knew that he was dead. They had come in and he was freaking dead. Now he was sitting there telling them of meeting Azrael or death incarnate. It didn't matter to her whether it was real or not. Izuku was running into a dangerous destiny that she knew. She had to get stronger so she could protect him and be by his side. No one was going to take Izuku away. She promised herself that. Hitoshi Shinso. Okay, if he is the living dead, how can I prove it? Undead are immune to mind control, so I should try my quirk on him. Also, maybe I can get 𝐈𝐵 to get me some holy water. We should see if he burns in the sunlight or has an aversion to crosses. If he is some sort of zombie, he may need to eat flesh. I need to be prepared. I should contact Reiko. This could be the start of the zombie apocalypse. Katsuki Bakugo. What the actual fuck? So, Either his brother had a psychotic episode, or he just talked to fucking death. Either way, Katsuki didn't care. Izuku had been dead, and now he was alive. Once again, he had almost failed, but he had been given a second chance. He would not waste it. He was going to protect his brother, even if he had to lock the fucker in the basement for his own good. He was going to have to talk to Andi about always having someone with Izuku to knock him the fuck out for his safety if the situation required it. Mitsuki Bakugo. When I get home and Masa asks, I am just going to tell him it was a false alarm and change the subject. When Mizuki asks, I will lie my ass off because my little girl will try and blow someone up. 𝗓𝗫 I knew he was part angel. But God answered my prayer. I must honor my word and be by his side. I must talk to my mother immediately. I need to transfer schools. I must keep my word. God has plans for Izuku, and this miracle is a testament to that. He came back to me. I prayed and called him back, and he answered. I told him I would be by his side, and he said promise. 𝗓𝗫's cheeks flushed a little bit for some unknown reason. Izuku Midoriya. As he finished his tale to his family, there was a myriad of expressions on their faces. He knew the story was fantastic, but it was the truth. Before they could express their belief or disbelief, it was his mother that spoke up and told the story of Kara and Raphael. How it had been passed through her family forever. Whether it was true or not, it was something special on her side of the family. She knew for a fact that Izuku had never heard that story, so for this Azrael to mention Raphael had made 𝐭𝐽 believe her son. While 𝐭� didn't believe in 𝗓𝗫's god, she had a belief in spirits and ancestors. His father still insisted that he would be talking to a therapist, but Auntie said nothing. Kachin just walked over and hugged his brother. I don't care if it is real or not. All I know is that you were dead and now you aren't. I don't care whom I must thank or if I must blow someone up. You better not do that shit again. I can't lose you, Izuku. Not like that. 𝗓𝗫 was pulled to the side and confused when Hitoshi asked her for holy water, which of course she had. Then was even more puzzled when he splashed it on Izuku and jumped back. He turned to everyone. He has passed the holy water test, but he still may be a zombie. He proclaimed as Himiko smacked him upside the back of his head. After that, the family soon made their way to leave except 𝗏𝐽, who was going to stay with her Izuku. As night fell, Midnight returned with some food for the mother and son. Recovery girl came and took some more blood samples, leaving them in silence. 𝗏𝐽 just sat there staring at him. Sorry? Do you know what that did to me, Izuku? Izuku hung his head. I have an idea, but I didn't know what else to say and I had to act quickly. Izuku, I understand that the day may come when you are a pro-hero out there with Katsuki and everyone else that I may turn on the television and see the news that something terrible has happened to one if not all of you. I know that, understand that, and dread that. But not now. I am half tempted to pull you from this internship, but I know that would just make matters worse. You must promise me. You must swear to me that you won't do something like this again, at least until you graduate. You must learn a very important lesson to me now. Izuku looked at his mother, whose face was full of concern, worry, and sadness. People die, and you must understand and accept that. People will be taken away from us in sometimes horrible ways. Just because you can save someone doesn't mean you need to. You must have a sense of self-preservation. I know that being a hero means saving people and self-sacrifice, but there is a difference between just running around and throwing your life away and laying your life on the line to save someone. Don't be so reckless with your own life, Izuku. You matter just as much as someone else. Izuku kind of understood. After all, he was only 11 years old. He knew that he couldn't put his family through something like this again. He didn't know if Azrael would give him another free pass. He knew that he had died, and he didn't regret his actions. But when he thought about if he had been at home and received news that someone in his family had died, he would have the feeling in the pit of his stomach. Gave him an inkling of what his family had gone through today. I kind of get it, Mom. I promise to be more careful. It's all I can say. That is good enough for me. 𝗏𝐽 climbed into the bed next to her son and wrapped her arms around him. Despite his mild protests, he knew there was no way he was getting out of this. His mother needed this, and so did he. As the wear and tear of the day sank in on him, he felt himself being pulled into the land of dreams. As the last vestiges of consciousness slipped through his mind, he thought he saw Azrael in the corner of the room with a smile upon his face. Shiozaki household. He was dead. 𝗧𝗪 exclaimed. 𝗓𝗫's father just sat there in silence, stunned. Please explain from the beginning, 𝗓𝗫. 𝐈𝐵 explained how she had just arrived at the Midoriya household when she had heard the crash from inside the house, rushed in and found Mrs. Midoriya on the floor along with Himiko. When she read the text, she knew something had happened. She had gotten a hold of Mrs. Bakugo and Mr. Midoriya, and they rushed over to UA to find that Izuku had killed himself to heal someone. That Izuku was, in fact, dead. They were taken to the body. Recovery Girl explained that they had tried her quirk, shocking his heart back, CPR, absolutely everything to save him. Everyone was crying. She had cried, then she was standing next to his body and was praying. She told her parents that she was praying for God to give her friend back, that she was praying and bartering, begging for everything she could think of. And then she promised that she would always be by his side if he came back, and the heart monitor beeped. So she kept calling to him, whispering to him to come back to her, and when he woke up, he said promise. She then told them of the experience that Izuku had told them when he had died and was brought back. She didn't know if it was true, but she did believe in the part of Angel's heritage, and she had felt that when she had first met him. But either way, God had granted her a miracle. She had to honor her word and need to transfer schools immediately. Her parents told her they would pray on it, and with that, 𝗂𝐵 made her way to bathe and go to bed. Her mother made a quick call to Recovery Girl to verify a few matters before talking to her husband. They had to agree with their daughter. God had delivered a miracle whispered upon their daughter's lips. They would make the transfer with immediate haste. Maybe they should talk about a marriage arrangement between 𝗂𝐵 and Izuku. Mizuki Bakugo. She sat in her room holding her stuffed green bunny with a scowl on her brow. Something was wrong. Oni-chan and Mama had been crying when she had asked Mama if something had happened to Izuku. Mama lied to her. Someone had messed with Izuku. No one messes with her Izuku. No one. All Might. He was sitting in a bath in one of his homes. The day had been one that would rank with when Nana had chosen him to be her successor. That boy Izuku had given his life to save someone he didn't know. Izuku didn't know that he had just saved All Might. That he had given the #1 hero a second chance. He sat and relaxed. Tomorrow was going to be a battery of tests again. Maybe he could eat something for real soon. As he fell into his musings, his bathtub exploded. The next morning, after receiving a clean bill of health and a lengthy lecture from Recovery Girl, Izuku was released and told to go home and rest for another day before returning to school. He had to promise to report if had noticed any side effects or unusual symptoms. It was a Sunday, and with the drama of the day before, it was a quiet day. He was forced to sit on the couch most of the day while various family members would cuddle him. It wasn't until Hitoshi ran more tests to make sure he wasn't an undead that his new brother was satisfied. The only unfortunate thing was that Hitoshi had told Reiko about the possibility of Izuku being an undead, which meant that he had to explain to her why such a thing was possible. This in turn led to Reiko and Cammy being aware of the drama yesterday, and they came over to get the story. Cammy kept it rather chill. She even cornered Katsuki in a corner of the yard away from everyone and just hugged him. He tried to protest until he broke down where no one else could see him. Reiko was glad that he was still amongst the living, but slightly sad he was not part of the undead. She went to smother Himiko in her room, allowing the blonde to have her breakdown. The strangest part was when Mizuki came over with Bakugo, and after she snuggled Izuku for a little bit, she told him in quote, "I handled whoever messed with you. No one messes with my Izuku." Then she wandered off to snuggle Auntie Inko. That very Monday, 𝗂𝐵 joined Izuku's class and was given a seat right next to him, on his right to be exact. After All Might, he had received a clean bill of health. He reached out to his old sidekick 𝗧𝗏𝗏. It took them some time, but All Might had pushed them to reconcile, though they did have a brief argument over succession. But All Might didn't stop there. He brought in his mentor Torino as well. He told them all about Izuku Midoriya and what the boy had done for him. He also told them of his intention to pass one for all to the boy. It wouldn't be immediate, but he wanted to take the time to get to know the boy and help train him for the transition. When the trio found the group that surrounded the lad and all their desires to be heroes, he started talking about training all of them. 𝗧𝗏𝗏. He had been ready to start arguing with All Might as soon as he reached out, but then he heard what had happened. How his idol, his friend, had almost died in one for all with him. If it hadn't been for an 11-year-old with the most amazing and terrifying healing gift sacrificing himself and somehow being resurrected, All Might would have died. He wanted to argue with his old friend about his decision to pass one for all to the boy, That was until he used his quirk on the lad and saw him standing surrounded by dozens of other heroes as new symbols of peace. Gran Torino. Toshi had lost his mind. He was grateful that this boy had saved Toshi's life, but to pass one for all to this scrawny green bean was just madness. But he did like the kid and his little group. They all wanted to be heroes and they were trying their best to train, pushing themselves all to make sure that the green bean would be safe. Then he saw it, the boy was not just going to rely on his friends to protect him, he wanted to be able to protect himself as well. He was training as well. The kid was also smart. Much smarter than Toshi ever was. He loved Toshi, but his brains were not on the list of why Torino loved him or why Nana had chosen him. Recovery girl. Izuku Midoriya could not be left alone at any time. This rule was not negotiable. After the All Might, this hard rule was passed. She didn't even object to it when one of his little friends started accompanying him to his training. It was cute in its way. She had noticed that Toshi was hanging around more, taking a keen interest in this education and physical training. Recovery girl got to know 𝐭𝐽𝐽 rather well as she showed up more than most, and with 𝐭�𝐽 being a nurse, she was a big help with some of the smaller injuries that would come into the infirmary. The students took a liking to Izuku as they would watch him grow and learn. Izuku's absolute highlight was being able to attend the sports festivals as her assistant. Nizu would even provide tickets for his friends to watch from the stands. Chiyo felt a sense of pride when 2 days before the boy's 12th birthday, he passed his EMT certification. Izuku, having taken to heart what had happened with Mr. Yagi, he did his best to use practical medicine before relying on his quirk. But it was not all sunshine and roses. He could feel an invisible pull, and a lot of times that pull would take him to the hospital. He would go there sometimes with Recovery Girl as she was teaching him medicine, or to see his mom with his dad. Then they would just lose track of him. He never got caught. It was very strange, but he would feel the pull, and it would drag him to different parts of the hospital. He would be in the children's unit a lot, and whenever he was there, he would swear he caught glimpses of Azrael, but he could never quite get a good view. He would chase after him at first, but I would always lead him to a room where he just couldn't walk away. The parents or whomever was attending the room would leave, and he would slip in. They were always in so much pain. He couldn't just walk out, so he would do it. Sometimes the pain was so bad he would cry for 20 minutes afterward. It was the neonatal intensive care unit he would find himself in a lot. He would see children like Mizuki and see their pain racking their little bodies, and he couldn't stop himself. He went and healed child after child after child. Tears streaked his face from the pain, but there was another and another. In the end, his mother found him crying in a hallway. She didn't scold him, she didn't yell. She just held her baby boy close. On Ibara's birthday, she had asked him to come with her and a group from her church to visit a sister mission to the one they normally volunteered at to minister to those who had no one to come to them. Now Izuku couldn't minister to anyone, but he could sit and listen to the older people who either had no children to come and visit them, or those that were simply alone in the world. He felt the pull. It led him down the hall to a medical area. When his feet stopped in front of a door, he could see the pain radiating out of the room. The mental anguish was calling out. Izuku slipped in and saw there on the bed of a young man who was severely burned. Izuku walked over and looked at him with his eyes glowing. He could see all the damage. The damage was intense. It was caused by the boy's quirk. The boy had an incredibly powerful fire quirk, but no resistance to it. His body was a patchwork of burned skin and healed skin grafted over and held in place with staples like he was the victim of a sick science experiment. Tragic, isn't it? Azrael? Who else? Is it you that pulls me to these people? You want me to heal them? I want to see what you will do. Now what will you do? Who is this? Toya Todoroki, the firstborn son of Endeavor. What the hell is Endeavor's son doing in a shelter's hospital wing? Fate, yes, let's call it fate. You're not going to explain it any more than that, are you? Nope. Now what are you going to do? I can heal him, but that is going to be painful. He will just get hurt again when he uses his quirk. I think that is messing with his head as well. He has an obsession. If I heal him, I can try and heal his mind, but he may just end up in a world of pain again. There is nothing I can do about the damage his quirk does to him. After snapping a picture of the young man's terrifying visage, Izuku reached into his bag and pulled out a leather bit he had become in the habit of carrying around. He placed it in his mouth and closed his eyes and reached out. The white fire erupted from his hand, engulfing the young man. Izuku bit down with all his might and screamed. The pain was so intense he broke his jaw as he bit down. As the black and red fire erupted from his body, the pain dampened before fading, but he was left on the floor with ragged breaths escaping around the bit. He slowly sat up, his eyes drifting to the bed, emerald green eyes meet turquoise. "Who are you? Where am I?" the young man shouted, as blue flame erupted from his hand. The boy grunted in pain but was ready to attack. The smell of flesh smoke began to fill the room. "I just healed you. Please don't hurt yourself so soon," Izuku managed. Confusion danced across the young man's face as the fire flickered out. He looked at his hands, then his chest, and he glanced around the room frantically till he saw a mirror on the far wall. He leaped from the table with almost a desperate act, then ran to the mirror and just stared at his face. He turned, looking down at Izuku, his hands running over his face and neck. "You did this?" "The healing part, yes. As to the way I found you." Izuku held his phone out with the picture of how he looked before the healing. "All I want to know is two things. Who did that to you? And what is Toya Todoroki doing in the medical wing of a charity mission and not in a real damn hospital? How do you know who I am? Would you believe me that the Angel of Death told me?" Toya shook his head. Izuku sighed. "Well then, the best way to describe it is that something led me to here and put that answer in my head. But we need to talk about something." Toya's eyes narrowed. "And what might that be?" Izuku tapped his head. "There is something wrong up there, my friend. I was able to heal you, but it is not a permanent thing. You need to seek counseling. Also, you and your quirk are not compatible." "Yeah, it burns the fuck out of me. All I wanted to do was be a hero so I could surpass All Might and make my old man happy, but he tried to stop me after years of pushing me to my breaking point. I thought it was because my baby brother Shoto was born, and he seemed to be a perfect mix of my parents. Half hot, half cold. I was so furious that all the training and all the pain was going to be for nothing that I just erupted. The last thing I saw was the blue fire going everywhere. Well, I can't comment on your father's state of mind or any of that stuff, but I can tell you that you have an unhealthy obsession in your head and you need to do something about it. I can also tell that you have no fire resistance at all. That is why your quirk hurts you. Most fire quirk users have some sort of resistance to heat or fire. Even I have some, and my fire heals people." "You heal people by burning them? Are you sure you are not my father's bastard or something?" "As sure as I can be. I look like my mom and dad. So?" Izuku shrugged. "Look, Toya, I am not trying to tell you how to live your life, but you were going to head down a dark path if I hadn't come across you, and I don't want you to do so, especially after I healed you. If you are going to continue to use your fire, I would recommend doing so in a way that is the opposite of endeavor." Toya raised an eyebrow. "So unlearn everything and start over?" Endeavor possesses an inherent heat and flame resistance, allowing him to utilize his fire as a tool for combat by enveloping himself in it and delivering powerful punches or unleashing it from any part of his body. However, as a regular person, you cannot do the same. You must either release the fire or apply it to a heat-resistant object, such as a club or sword. Wearing gloves that offer the necessary resistance can enable you to release fire in bursts. It's worth noting that your blue fire burns hotter than your father's, but prolonged exposure to it can result in burns. "What the hell, kid? You heal people and quirk counseling?" "No, I just love quirks, and figuring out how they work is amazing to me. It's a hobby of mine." Izuku pulled out his wallet and handed all his money over to Toya. "It should be enough to get you a ride home and maybe a meal, but that is up to you. I would tell you that you need to get the hell out of here because something is wrong with this place, and I am about to call the cops and some pro-heroes." Toya looked at the money in his hand, the gray burn on his hand, and his healed reflection. Izuku walked over and touched his damaged hand, and Toya watched in amazement as the white flame covered his hand in a cool and soothing sensation. Then he saw the same fire erupt and the greenette's hand as he hissed. "Do you have a name, kid?" "Izuku Midoriya, and Toya?" "Yeah. I sincerely hope that I won't regret my actions today. As someone who aims to help and heal, I understand the weight of taking on another's pain. I am aware of the immense physical strain you've put on yourself in your pursuit of becoming a hero. I am optimistic that this second chance will lead to positive outcomes, but it's important that you explore alternative ways to utilize your abilities and consider seeking counseling. You heal someone by taking all their pain, and you did that for me? Why?" Most people deserve a second chance, especially if they never had a good one to start with. Izuku smiled at Toya as he dialed a number on his phone. Hey recovery girl, I think I need the police and some pro heroes at the mission shelter in Tokyo. There was some guy secreted in the back that was suffering from some major burns and it looked like someone went all mad scientist on him. I am sending you the photo now. He looked into Toya's eyes. No, he suddenly jumped up and ran off and I didn't want another lecture again, so I decided not to pursue and call for help like I promised everyone. No, I had gotten separated from the group I am going to go to now. I am fine, I promise. Now please, I want to get out of here before something bad happens. Thank you, I will have the group wait out front for the police and pros to arrive. Toya just looked at the young boy in marvel. Thank you, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. I will make sure that the pain you bore for me will not be in vain. He turned and ran off down the hall. Izuku ran off in the opposite direction to find 𝗓𝗏. He was sure that either way he was going to get a lecture, especially after he told his friends the truth. Azrael sat on a rooftop opposite the mission as heroes and police arrived. He watched as Izuku was with 𝗓𝗏 and their group off to the side. With a smile, he saw the girl leaning into Izuku, causing them both to blush. He witnessed Toya boarding a bus in the direction of his home. So far things were shaping up nicely. As he was musing to himself, he felt a familiar presence manifest behind him. You do know that we are not supposed to interfere like this? Who said? We did. We all made a vow. Interesting. And where was this vow when you allowed Raphael to fall? We all know that there was no way he could have beaten you in a fight. You allowed it. Silent. It's been quite some time since I last caught up with him. As we're aware, he ought to have been taken in by now. I'm not technically violating any regulations. I'm merely guiding the lad in the hope that he'll comply with my wishes. You didn't collect him. That is within my purview. I can choose to send someone back. Just as you choose to sometimes imbue people with strength in times of crisis, Gabriel. By doing this, you are drawing the attention of others. Why should I allow this to continue? Please remember with whom you are communicating. I am a powerful force known as death, and one day I will come for you and many others. However, you can also see the path that is unfolding before us. Wouldn't it be fascinating to witness the individual's strengths and capabilities firsthand? I am confident that he would appreciate your blessings, and you may have noticed that he is beginning to attract a following. Perhaps one of his followers has caught your attention. It's important to keep an eye on the situation, but it's worth noting that others may not be as invested as we are in seeing this unfold peacefully. Conflicts may likely arise not just for us, but also for the boy. I am aware, but doesn't he remind you of Raphael? He does, I see it in his eyes and aura. Did you? Did I what? Did you let him go? Our sibling, who was willing to sacrifice a lot for the woman he loved. He valued her more than his own goals. He confided in me that just being in her presence brought out stronger emotions in him than any act of kindness or healing he had ever done. It made me think how nice it would be to feel that kind of passion. When I went to pick him up, I initially wanted to send him back, but he pleaded with me to wait for his partner to arrive. He knew she was on her way, and he wanted to be sent on with her. I agreed to his request, and when she finally arrived, the joy on her face was unforgettable. I struggle to find the right word to describe the moment, but magical is the best I can come up with. Their embrace and kiss were so beautiful that I now use them as a benchmark for all other displays of affection. Those that come close to what I witnessed that day earn my admiration. Azrael, please be cautious of the games you choose to engage in. There are many of us who are watching you closely, including some who prefer to remain in the shadows. Some of us hold you in high regard, while others harbor fear and hatred towards you. Please proceed thoughtfully. Understood, Gabriel. Till next time. Once again, Azrael was once again alone on his rooftop watching the scene unfold. A smile danced upon his lips as Izuku was whispering in 𝗓𝗏's ear. The girl was blushing furiously, and her breath had quickened. Unfortunately, or fortunately for her, Izuku hadn't noticed. Todoroki household. The fact that someone was knocking on 𝗓𝗏𝗃𝗏's door was annoying enough, but then he heard his daughter screaming. 𝗓𝗏 burst from the dojo where he was training youngest Shoto and ran through the halls towards the front door. As he burst into the main area, he saw his daughter on her knees crying. When he looked at the figure at the door, 𝗓𝗏 froze. "Hi, Dad," was all the person said. Never had the Todoroki children ever seen their father faint before. Hell, they rarely saw him sleep, but today they saw exactly that. 𝗫𝗍 Todoroki Endeavor saw his oldest son standing in the doorway and did exactly that. He fainted, collapsing right on his face. 𝗫𝗍 woke up on the floor. As he pushed himself up to a resting position, he saw Toya there extending a water bottle. "Hey, old man." "Toya." 𝗫𝗍 spoke in little more than a whisper. It was his son, but there were no burns, no marks. His mind immediately jumped to this, maybe some villain with a shape-shifting quirk. "When I was 7, I told you that I didn't care if my fire burned me to ash. I would never stop wanting to be a hero," Toya said. "You are probably wondering if I am a villain in disguise. But how? How is this possible? You are dead." 𝗫𝗍 rose to his knees. "You pushed me hard because of your damn obsession, and I pushed to show you I was worthy. Then Shoto came along with the perfect blend of quirks, and I became even angrier. That is why I lashed out at him and the rest of you. I was going down a bad road and I never even saw it till that day. My obsession? All Might. You are so obsessed with passing him that you drove me to feel that the only way I could be worthy was if could do just that. If I could do that, then maybe you would love me. You cast aside Fuyumi and Natsuo because of their weak ice quirks and have now focused your obsession on Shoto. We are your children, and we mean nothing to you unless we can fulfill something you cannot. I am your father, Toya." A father's primary concern is the well-being and aspirations of his children, rather than what they can do for him. It's concerning that Shoto doesn't even utilize his fire ability, and that your actions have contributed to our mother's mental health struggles. Additionally, Fuyumi seems to be prioritizing the happiness of others while neglecting her desires. It's worth asking if you're aware of her goals in life. Lastly, Natsuo's academic performance suffered because of seeking your attention. Your mother attacked Shoto. She almost ruined. Ruined what? His mental health, his childhood, his life, or did she almost ruin your perfect chance to have one of us pass All Might? You do understand that by the time Shoto graduates and becomes a pro, that All Might will have been a hero for almost 40 years. That he will more than likely retire before Shoto can take the title of #1. That I will be someone else that he takes it from. The history books will never read how someone took the title of #1 hero from All Might. They will read after the All Might era ended. 𝗫𝗍 didn't say anything. Part of him wanted to yell, but what Toya was saying made sense. He didn't know what Fuyumi wanted. She could have a boyfriend. Or a girlfriend. Natsuo hated him and wouldn't share anything with him even if he asked. He was damn sure that if he was dying of thirst in the desert, the boy wouldn't even give him a sip of water. Shoto was scared. Because of Rei and because of him. Rei had wanted counseling after Toya died, and 𝗫𝗍 would not hear of it. 𝗫𝗍 also knew that if word ever got out of his quirk marriage, then it would forever taint everything. There were moments when his and Rei's relationship could have blossomed into something real, but he treated her like he treated his children. Property. Things for him to do with as he saw fit. You and I have a second chance. We can all have a second chance. The boy that healed me could heal Shoto's face. I still want to be a hero, and I think Shoto does too. But we need to be our heroes, not the heroes you think we should be. What will it be, old man? 𝗫𝗍 looked at Shoto, who was standing behind Fuyumi with his fist clenched, and Natsuo had his arms crossed and was looking away. Fuyumi's eyes were wet with tears, pleading and begging him to say yes. Toya was there offering a change. He could see the two paths. One, he continued the way he had. Lose Toya again, Fuyumi would eventually leave. Natsuo was gone already, and Shoto probably already hated him. 2. Take Toya to Rei and let Rei heal. Get the whole family into therapy and try to be an actual damn family. Something he never had himself and still didn't have now. Toya was right, All Might had already established an era. Hell, he was the symbol of peace, and he had already started to slow down some. Very well then, we should go see your mother. Shoto looked sad and happy as he touched his face. Fuyumi started crying. Natsuo looked conflicted before he looked at his father and said, "You get one goddamn chance." Toya smiled, "Thanks, old man. Now I need to get into therapy. I have been given this second chance and I owe it to them to try my damn best." Who do you owe this to? Izuku Midoriya. -2 weeks later. The Midoriya household was alive as the kids were running around the backyard having a grand time. Hisashi and Matsuo were cooking at the grill and drinking a beer, while Mitsuki and 𝗏𝗏 were just sitting and talking, enjoying glasses of wine. When the doorbell rang, 𝗏𝗏 didn't think much about it, assuming it may be 𝗓𝗏𝗏's or one of the other girls' parents. She walked through the house and nearly dropped her wine when there, standing in the doorway, was 𝗲𝗏𝗏. "Hello, you must be Mrs. Midoriya, I presume." "Yes, sir, Mr. 𝗲𝗏𝗏. How may I help you?" "I was wondering if I could have a chat with your son, Izuku Midoriya." 𝗏𝗏 immediately became somewhat suspicious. Has he done something wrong? I could assure you that if he healed someone, he is a licensed EMT and can do so. A young man with white hair and beautiful blue eyes placed his hand on his father's arm and stepped forward. "I am sorry that we are disturbing you, Mrs. Midoriya. My name is Toya Todoroki. You see, your son healed me and I am extremely grateful, but we wanted to ask if he could heal my brother as well." He motioned to his side, and she saw a 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏 boy about Izuku's age standing there with a scar on his face. "I understand the burden that your son takes on to heal people, and we wouldn't be here asking this lightly. But please at least let us present our case to him, and if he says no, we will walk away. Isn't that right, Dad?" She saw the number 2 hero tense and then took a deep breath. "Yes, we will walk away, Mrs. Midoriya. I will give you my word that no grudge will be held against your son." 𝗏𝗏 invited them in while she went and retrieved Izuku when she called him from the back door, and he came trotting over with a smile. "Would you mind explaining to me why 𝗲𝗏𝗏 is in our living room?" Izuku immediately sweat dropped. "I may have healed his oldest son who was believed to be dead." "Excuse me. He was at the mission I went to with 𝗓𝗏𝗏, you know, when we called heroes and stuff. You failed to mention that you healed someone. How bad was it?" "Before I answer that, I feel I should mention in my defense that Azrael led me to him." 𝗏𝗏's stern gaze softened. "We are going to talk about all that now. We shouldn't keep him waiting." 𝗲𝗏𝗏 and his 2 sons were standing where she had left them when Izuku walked in. His put on his best smile before politely bowing. "I am Izuku Midoriya. It is a pleasure to meet you, sir." At least the boy has manners. "I would like to speak with your young man. First, I would like to thank you for what you did in bringing back Toya into our life. Second, I would like to ask if you would be willing to heal my son Shoto. He was injured in an accident by his mother. She was suffering terribly after Toya's death, and I did not help the situation. I humbly request that if you could heal him, it would not only aid in his recovery but that of my wife." As 𝗲𝗏𝗏 said this, he bowed deeply to the boy, his head lowered. "Sorry to interject, Mr. 𝗲𝗏𝗏, 𝗏𝗏 said. "Simply 𝗲𝗏𝗏 is fine," he responded as he looked up. "Please, you don't need to bow to me, sir. You are the number 2 hero in all of Japan," Izuku said. 𝗏𝗏 placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. "Are you aware of how my son heals people?" "I am assuming through his quirk?" "That is correct. What I should have said, are you aware of how my son's quirk works?" "Not entirely, no. When he heals someone, he takes in all the pain that the injury has caused, so he feels it himself. He can then heal himself." 𝗲𝗏𝗏's eyes widened and he looked at the boy with a measure of awe. "You took in all the pain from Toya's burns onto yourself to heal him?" 𝗏𝗏 raised her eyebrow. "Yes, sir," Izuku said as his sweat dropped again. He was going to be in trouble again. Izuku looked over at the one called Shoto. He could see all the pain not only from his face but from other parts of his body. There was also some emotional pain, but nothing that seemed to border on psychosis. Izuku walked over and stood in front of Shoto. "Do you want me to heal you?" Shoto looked briefly at his father and Toya. "Yes, if it will lessen my mother's guilt and help to make us a family, then I ask that you heal me." Izuku looked to his mother. "It is your decision, Izuku. Will your life be in danger?" "No, not at all. I would be more than willing to offer you some financial compensation or anything else that I have in my power to provide," 𝗲𝗏𝗏 said. "If you could sign some autographs for me and my friends and maybe help out 𝗏𝗏𝗏 with some pointers on his quirk, that would be all I would ask," Izuku said with a smile. "That is all you would ask?" "Yes, sir. I don't heal people for financial gain. I do it to ease their pain and for some give them a second chance." At the last comment, he looked to Toya, before turning back to Shoto. "Are you ready? Is it going to hurt?" "For you, no, but my quirk manifests as fire, but it won't burn or hurt you," he said hastily. With that, Izuku pulled up his white fire. 𝗲𝗏𝗏 watched carefully as Izuku placed his hand over the damaged part of Shoto's face. "It feels cool and soothing," Shoto said, leaning into Izuku's hand after flinching at first. He could feel his face and other parts of him that had been injured or burned from training fading and replaced with a cooling sensation. With his good eye, He watched as Izuku flinched from the pain before he stepped back, and white fire flared from his body. "There you go, all done." 𝗵𝗲𝗏 looked upon the unmarred face of his son, and couldn't help but let a single tear fall before he composed himself. Izuku ran off and came back with 2 notebooks. Opening one, he handed it to the flame hero. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 took it and was impressed by the drawings of him that were on the page. What caught his attention was the detailed breakdown of his quirk and even further possible applications. He frowned slightly when he read. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 is a very good hero, with an extremely successful capture record and case closure percentage. But he is not very friendly or approachable and seems to lack the ability to smile. For these reasons alone, he will never be ranked higher than he is now. His stern demeanor and lack of interaction with the public will constantly hold him back. It is a pity because he truly is an exceptional hero. I am too stern, huh? Sorry, sir, but yes. You never smile and come across as too stern. So, I take it that All Might is your favorite? Izuku looked down. Yes, sir. Well, he is the strongest hero of the day. That is not why he is my favorite. It is because he always smiles and makes people feel safe. He takes time to speak at hospitals and schools and gives people some encouraging words. Sometimes that is what people need to keep on persevering. I don't think you have to run around smiling like him or anything, but if you could speak to people more softly, it would help you. With the public, that is. Well, let me meet these friends of yours so I can fulfill my end of our bargain. Shoto, would you like to come outside and play some? Is that okay, father? Yes, that is fine. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 said with a slight head nod. You should come also, Toya, so I can introduce you guys to Mizuki. She can blow stuff up with her mind. Toya blinked a few times as he followed them toward the backyard. That's insane. I know, right? Izuku said with a smile. Once the boys had left 𝗵𝗏𝗏 to hand over a rather thick envelope to Inko, he could see that she was about to protest. Madam, your son has a pure heart and wishes to use his quirk for good reasons. However, the world can be a challenging place. I would like to offer this gift to you on his behalf. Please keep it in an account for him to access in the future. Your son has given my family a second chance, and although this gesture is insufficient to express my gratitude, please allow me to offer it as a token of appreciation. Inko nodded. I will take it then. Your generosity is greatly appreciated. As the two of them stepped outside, holy shit, is fucking 𝗵𝗏𝗏. Katsuki yelled. Watch your damn mouth, you brat. Mitsuki shouted back. Inko shook her head. Welcome to our home. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 did as promised after signing some autographs before taking Katsuki aside for some quirk counseling and even a little training. Shoto was mobbed by the group, but he found he did not hate it. The other kids were running and laughing. It took some time, but eventually, Shoto was running with them with a thin but growing smile on his face. Toya watched and smiled as he was dragged into their game of tag, when Mizuki ran up and tagged him to be it. The only thing that saddened Shoto was he didn't have a cell phone to trade numbers with. He was happy when they all wrote their numbers down for him so he could call them from home. Hisashi and Inko walked them out and offered Shoto the invitation to come back anytime and play with the group. Once they were gone, they returned to the backyard. The kids dragged Izuku over to them. He may have muttered something about them being traitors. Okay, Izuku, out with it. Which part? The part where you have been seeing Azrael again, his mother said. Everyone was visibly tense. Before anyone freaks out and beats me up, I haven't done anything that killed me or anything. Though now that I think about it, healing Toya should have, or at the very least could have. But remember when you found me in the NICU, Mom? His friends looked at him questioningly. Okay, well, let me back up. It started with me feeling like a pull. Something would call me. Then I found 𝗂𝗏𝗏, and we notified the authorities. 𝗂𝗏𝗏 and Himiko were the first of his friends to wrap their arms around him as they struggled to get their emotions under control. Most of his friends and the adults were shedding some tears when Izuku was talking about the children, especially Masaru and Mitsuki, as they remembered the miracle that Izuku performed for them and Mizuki. The fact that Izuku had done that multiple times, pushing through the pain until his exhaustion had prevented him from doing more, elevated the boy even higher in their eyes and his friends. Azrael is doing something like he is testing me. I don't understand it completely. You said Toya should have killed you? How bad was he? Inko asked. Izuku pulled out his phone and showed him the picture. I think that by healing people it is making me tougher, like a possible aspect of my quirk. Like how Kachin's quirk seems to reinforce his shoulder and arm muscles to handle the pushback from his explosions, or Cammy can expel much larger breaths compared to what she takes in. Kachin nodded. The more you use it, the tougher you get, so you can heal more people. That makes sense. That makes me feel better in some way. But that doesn't explain the fact that the oldest son of Endeavor was in some shelter's hospital wing. Yeah, this is even more concerning. When I ask Mother about the medical wing, she doesn't talk about it and tells me not to worry, that it is being taken care of. I know that it is there for those who can't afford a normal hospital, but it is for minor things, not treating burn victims. Ibra added. You are so amazing, Zuzu, Himiko said, hugging him tight. I wouldn't say that, Himi, but if I can help, I want to. Well, let's all sit down and eat, Hisashi said. The group cheered and moved over to begin filling their plates. The conversation turned to happier topics as soon as their laughter filled the evening air. Adjusting was an understatement for the Todoroki household. Toya was back, Shoto didn't have a scar, Rei had returned home, and Enji was trying to be a father. Rei had fainted when Toya had walked into her room with a green-haired boy with freckles. When she awoke, she stared into deep green eyes, and his hand rested on her forehead. I assisted you, your mind was troubled. I just provided some clarity. Your future choices, however, are yours to make, he had stated. She felt a newfound clarity in her mind, something she hadn't experienced in years. Looking ahead, she saw the image of Toya from her dreams. No more burns and a small smile, standing before her. His words quickly reminded her that this was not a dream but a reality. Rei clung to her child she thought had died before calming enough to hear the extraordinary story he told her. Rei looked to Toya and then back to the boy she had been told was Izuku Midoriya, who possessed a unique healing quirk. Rei's mind raced to all the problems that had been present, on how she had hurt Shoto, and she began to cry again. Toya's words of comforted, he told of how Izuku had healed Shoto's scar, and that Shoto and the others were outside waiting to come in. Izuku nodded and opened the door, extending his hand and leading Shoto in. Her beautiful Shoto, whom she had hurt so badly. Rei wept. She flinched slightly when Shoto slowly wrapped his arms around her when he whispered his forgiveness though the dam broke. Rei held him tight, whispering apologies and asking for another chance. Rei was soon enveloped by something she had only dreamed about, a giant hug from all her children, the son she thought dead, the daughter who tried so hard to hold the family together, the son who had grown angry and distant, and the child whom she had scarred. As things settled down, Enji entered. Rei looked at the man that was her husband, not sure what he would do. She didn't expect Enji Todoroki, the number 2 hero in the country, to kneel before her and lower his head. Rei, I and the children would like you to come home. I know that I don't deserve it, and I know that I don't know how to do it, but I would like us to be a family. I have wronged you and would like to spend the rest of my days making that up to you and the children. For Rei, she thought of the time that she had loved him or loved the idea of the man he could be. Part of her wanted to yell and tell him to go to hell, to grant her a divorce, custody of the children, and never to see him again. Before her, she could see that path of shutting Enji out of their lives, but she could also see the fantasy of a happy household and marriage. It was the quiet voice of the green-haired boy standing part of this. Everyone deserves a second chance, but you don't have to grant a third, he said, and he walked out of the room. Rei stood and walked over to Enji, slowly placing her hand on his shoulder. If we go slow, then Enji, I would also like to try that. There was family counseling, couples counseling, and individual therapy. Rei and Enji stayed in separate bedrooms, going on actual dates, family movie nights, and even a trip to an amusement park. Rei got introduced to Shoto's friends, a group of kids that would run rampant through her backyard, filling it with laughter, drawing in her older children, reawakening Natsuo's happiness and Fuyumi's genuine smile, not the fake one she wore. Rei fretted over Toya and Shoto's training but was put at ease as Enji was bringing in different sidekicks to teach Toya differently, and she smiled when Shoto brought his fire out for the first time. Shoto wanted to be a hero not because Enji was pushing him, but because he wanted to be a hero to save people and to stand with his new friends, who all had the same dream. Toya tried to do it to show that he could use his second chance properly, to do things differently but to follow his dream of being a hero. Enji trained them, but he also listened when they talked, not just forcing his way down their throat. He instilled discipline in them and even took a hand in the blonde boy's training. Rei was introduced to 𝗏𝗏, Mitsuki, and Seinoru. Having friends outside her household was new, and mothers of the children's friends were something else altogether. The joy of a girl's day, the fun of watching their children run and play, sleepovers, trips to the beach and festivals, and a kiss between her and Enji under the fireworks. Time flies when you are having fun. Fun for the group was training. They primarily trained with Mr. Yagi and sometimes with Endeavor, but that was more Katsuki's thing. Though neither would admit it, Endeavor and Katsuki got along rather well. Much to their delight, the rest were more of Mr. Yagi's students. They would even have special training with Sir Night-Eye and an old hero named Gran Torino, who was All Might's teacher. It was intensive all the way around, but as time passed, the results were not going unnoticed. They all developed muscles. Even the parents had started exercising along with their children. It was a fitness renaissance. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Or have you ever wondered what happens when 7 teenagers experience puberty around the same time? It was not a thought that anyone wondered about or had really wanted to contemplate, but here they were. Girls becoming women, boys becoming men. Observing their journey of discovering new emotions and desires was akin to witnessing a visually impaired individual attempting to park a car amidst the chaos of a demolition derby. The boys were grappling to comprehend why the girls were no longer content with sitting beside them, while the girls expected the boys to decipher their unspoken cues. It's fascinating how time flies. Before we knew it, the kids were in their final year of middle school. They've all grown physically and are becoming more conscious of each other. Soon they were dancing around the issue and each other, Reiko and Hitoshi, Kami and Katsuki. Watching them orbit each other coming closer was fascinating, pulled by an invisible force. The parents and mentors watched it happening, smiling to themselves. Reiko was the first to act. She put the note in his locker, met him behind the gym, and confessed. Hitoshi immediately accepted, and they shyly held hands as they walked into the house, which caused the girls to whisk Reiko away to Himiko's room to talk. Katsuki walked up and hugged his adopted brother, and Izuku did the same. "Well, then, there is no way I am going to wait for a girl to step up," Katsuki said. When Kami emerged, Katsuki immediately asked her to go for a walk. Izuku smiled at his brother. He had never seen Kacchan so nervous. Himiko held 𝐈𝐵 back when Kami left. "𝐈𝐵, do you have feelings for Izuku?" Himiko asked while she looked at the carpet. 𝐈𝐵 knew that she did, but she also knew that Himiko did as well. They had danced around this for a while. 𝐈𝐵 needed clarification. She didn't know what to do. "Yes, Himi, I do, and I know you do too." "I believe we both have been feeling this way for a while now," Himi replied, raising her head to meet 𝐈𝐵's gaze. "But what should we do? I don't think I could step aside and be content." Neither could I. However, if we asked him to choose, it would cause him great distress, especially if he feels the same way about us, 𝐈𝐵 explained. "I am certain that he does. I have noticed him looking at us that way, especially during our beach trip. I value our friendship, 𝐈𝐵, and I don't want to lose you over this," Himi confessed. "You mean a lot to me too, Himi." "I, too, am unsure what to do," 𝐈𝐵 admitted. "Katsuki is probably confessing to Kami as we speak. Maybe Izuku will follow his lead and choose for us?" "I don't think I can let that happen. I need him to know how I feel, even if he rejects me," Himiko said, wiping a stray tear. "If he rejects me, it will hurt, especially because we live in the same house. But I don't want to go through life wondering what might have been. He and Katsuki saved me in the alley years ago, giving me a new life and dream to aim for. I owe it to myself to be honest with him. I understand your perspective, but I believe a divine force brought him into my life. Since we met, I couldn't help but feel a strong connection with him. Over time, that connection evolved into attraction and, eventually, love. Like you, I don't want to regret not taking any action. I vowed to God that if Izuku returned, I would never leave his side. I also promised Izuku that I would always stand by him and intend to keep those promises. So what now, then? You love him, and I love him. Do we force him to choose?" I do not know, Himi. I don't know." The two fell silent as they eventually sat beside each other on the bed. A knock at the door startled them both. Then the last voice they wanted to hear at the moment called out. "Are you two okay in there?" Izuku called. "Go away," they both shouted. Okay, Kill a guy for caring, they heard him respond as he walked down the hall. 𝗂𝗏 and Himiko giggled before there was a second knock at the door before they could respond. Girls, it's 𝐒𝐽𝐽. Himi jumped up and ran over to open the door. The smiling face of the matriarch of the house greeted her. May I come in, please? Himiko nodded and stepped back, and 𝗏𝗏 entered, closing the door behind her. She looked at the girls and offered them a soft smile. Is the others pairing up, forcing the two of you to confront your feeling about Izuku? 𝗂𝗏's mouth dropped slightly, and Himi just nodded. How long have you known Mama Doria? Does this make me a bad person? Himiko asked. No, Himi, it doesn't. I have known that you had feelings for him for years. I understood it and just watched it blossom into what it is now. That's why I never referred to you as brother and sister, even though you are my daughter. I saw the same thing in 𝗂𝗏, and so has her mother. Mother noticed? Yes, after Izuku returned to us, your mother came to me with a marriage proposal for you and Izuku. 𝗂𝗏 blushed. What did you say? I mentioned to her that I would be open to the idea if Izuku wanted it, said 𝗏𝗏 as Himiko's heart sank. However, this doesn't necessarily imply that I have consented. If Izuku chooses to marry 𝗂𝗏, I would be delighted. The same goes if he decides to marry you or both of you. The girls looked up, shocked. In Japan, polygamy has been legally accepted for over a century due to certain quirks, and polyamory has been prevalent for even longer. Although the topic is often taboo, it exists. 𝗂𝗏, the question is whether you can accept this practice, even if it contradicts your beliefs. 𝗂𝗏 was seen nibbling on her bottom lip, feeling troubled about the situation. She was aware that certain aspects of the Bible were disregarded, such as menstrual cycles, mixing cloth, and consuming pork or shellfish. However, the current situation is more complicated. At that moment, she couldn't answer and needed to discuss it with her parents and seek guidance through prayer. 𝗂𝗏 turned to Himiko and politely requested time to ponder and consult before consenting. Himiko told her she would give her till the weekend before the start of school, but that she would confess to Izuku regardless of 𝗂𝗏's decision. The girls hugged each other before they exited the room. Soon, Katsuki and Cammy returned, with Katsuki wearing Cammy's lipstick, too much laughter and teasing. They were followed by Hitoshi and Izuku, running for their lives from their brother. As the girls talked and teased Cammy, Mizuki walked over and tugged on Himiko's and 𝗂𝗏's hands. The girls turned and looked at the little girl. Mizuki placed her hand on her hips and declared, If you no marry Izuku, then I will. Before turning and walking off, feeling very good about herself. Mitsuki smiled, taking her daughter into her arms before announcing that she approved. Shiozaki household. 𝗂𝗏 carefully considered her feelings towards Izuku but received no divine guidance despite her prayers and contemplation. She felt conflicted because being around Izuku brought her comfort and stirred intense emotions. She even daydreamed about a future with him as a superhero couple, running their agency. Sharing Izuku with someone else did not bother her as much as she thought it would if it was Himiko. 𝗂𝗏 was aware of Himiko's love for Izuku and her determination to protect him. Similarly, 𝗂𝗏 trained hard to be by his side and defend him. She was sure Izuku and Himiko would be together while she watched from the sidelines if she did nothing and said nothing. She would honor her vow to be by his side, but she would be on the outside. That thought hurt her heart. She would no longer be allowed to rest her head on his shoulder, and it would be improper for her to dream of him. The thought was maddening to 𝗂𝗏, of the warmth of Izuku being taken from her. But what if she acted first and Izuku shut Himiko out? It was a cruel thought that made 𝗂𝗏 feel guilty for even thinking it. 𝗂𝗏 knew the noble and selfless thing to do was to step aside, yet she couldn't bring herself to do it. Eventually, the deadline was fast approaching, and 𝗂𝗏 went to her parents. 𝗂𝗏 entered the study, her heart pounding, threatening to burst out and run away. Her parents were sitting on a couch, reading slowly. She walked over to stand before them. They sensed that something had been weighing heavily on 𝗂𝗏 and were somewhat confident it had something to do with Izuku Midoriya. The boy had played a significant role since his appearance in their daughters' lives. He had saved a boy attacked at one of their shelters, saved the Todoroki family, and healed the madness of Himiko Toga, not to mention healed dozens of children and others. He had exposed devious doings at another mission and stole the heart of their only daughter. He had given their daughter friends and a renewed sense of purpose. They were not blind to their daughter's growing attraction to the boy. They had attempted to make a marriage contract with the family. He was selfless, with a fantastic quirk that the very usage spoke to the character of the boy. Their daughter was in love, but here she was tormented over something that had consumed her as of late. She was distant and lost in thought, praying almost feverishly for something. "Mom, Dad, would you judge me if I pursued a relationship with Izuku and Himiko?" she asked, her statement lingering in the silence after she spoke. "What I mean is that Izuku would date the both of us. Not that I would date Himiko. I have prayed, seeking an answer, and none has come. I cannot simply step back and let him go in that manner. Thinking that I could no longer be close to him hurts my heart, or not allowed to dream of him anymore torments my nights." She hung her head as the last words tumbled out. Her father, Shinko, looked at his daughter. It was a difficult position for him to be in. His immediate thought was that if Izuku couldn't see how wonderful his daughter was and commit to only her, then he wasn't worthy of 𝐈𝐵𝗲. The matter of how their faith viewed such issues was not favorable, even though early figures in the Bible had multiple wives. It was not endorsed in scripture. The references were of one man and one woman. However, things have evolved over the centuries to include same-sex couples. It varied from denomination to denomination, but the one they belonged to permitted it. At the core of their faith was love, love of their neighbor, and love of their fellow human being. Shinko had faith that if this were what his daughter wanted, it would work. That if this was done out of love, how could it be evil or wrong? 𝗧𝗪𝗏 was concerned about the situation when she noticed Himiko was looking at Izuku. As someone who prioritizes love above all else, much like her spouse, 𝗧𝗪𝗏 knew that Izuku would not want to cause harm to either girl. However, she also recognized that it would be difficult for either to agree to step back, even though most visitors to their facilities did not share their religious beliefs. This did not matter to 𝗧𝗪𝗏 or her husband, as their core mission was based on love and did not discriminate on any grounds. There is something significant about Izuku. The events that have occurred around and to him cannot be disregarded. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 strongly believes that a divine force is at play. If this unconventional relationship her daughter is contemplating is not meant to be, it will not come to fruition. Ultimately, it comes down to faith, and 𝗧𝗪𝗏 is a person of great faith. 𝐈𝐵𝗲 raises your head, my darling, Shinko said, watching his daughter comply. Love is the most precious gift that the Lord can bestow upon someone, and if your feeling for Izuku are telling you that this is the path to take, then walk this path you must. As long as you stay true to your heart, my daughter, nothing could make me pass judgment upon you. It is not my place to judge you. It is to guide and support you, to do my best for you so you can do your best. 𝗈𝐵𝗲, we have always told you that the core of our faith is love. If this is what you want, and as long as he treats the both of you right and equally, then I will support all three of you, her mother said. 𝗈𝐵𝗲 stood and was in awe of her parents. Their voices had no malice or judgment, nothing but love and support. Wordlessly, she climbed between them into their loving embrace. She stood there, not saying anything till she drifted off to sleep. Izuku. He awoke to the darkness of his room. Glancing at the clock, he was greeted with the red neon of 2 a.m. He wasn't alone. He knew something else was there. He couldn't move, yell, anything. "Glad to see you are awake, 𝗧𝗏. May I call you Izuku? Do I have much say in the matter? Seeing how I cannot move or speak aloud, I am pretty sure that you can call me whatever you want, and there isn't anything I can do about it." "Then Izuku it is. You are an exciting being, you know that. Death would rarely take an interest in anything, but as I watch you, I can see why. Who are you?" "Not necessary at the moment. I can't have you running to death quite yet." "Then what do you want?" "I would like to share a warning with you. Many years ago, an agreement was made that beings such as death would not interfere in the lives of mortals. This agreement created a truce that lasted for thousands of years. However, with death taking an interest in you, guiding you, and refusing to take you across, many of us question why we should continue to uphold this truce. Then it would be best if you talk to him about that." "Why come to me?" "Because you should be made aware of your precarious position, 𝗧𝗏. I do this because I care and have no desire to talk to death anytime soon. Hence this meeting. So, you are telling me that by death not taking my soul but returning me to life, and by him leading me to people and healing them, it is upsetting other people. Essentially. Well, sorry about this. I don't care. I am healing people and giving some a second chance. In the case of the children, I have given them a first chance. I could die tomorrow, and I only regret that I am too chicken shit to tell Himiko and 𝐈𝐵 how I feel. Because it is fucking selfish of me to tell two wonderful girls. Hey, I love you both, but I can't decide between you, so I don't know what to do. Most of the time, I would assume that statement was nothing but bravado, but I know it is true with you. I could kill you now. That would be your only regret and genuine sadness. You, Izuku, are one to be watched. Next, you talk to Death to ask him for some protection. He owes you that much. Others will be less nice when they come to visit. Believe this one thing, if you and Death have this relationship, someone will come to visit. Good night, Izuku. Sleep tight. Yeah, I don't think sleep is on my list tonight. Izuku promptly fell asleep. When he awoke, he promptly called out to Azrael only to receive no response. He sat in bed for a good hour before grabbing his phone. It was Saturday, the weekend before school was to start. He contemplated calling Katsuki, but he remembered that he and Cammy had a date today, as did Reiko and Hitoshi. He didn't want to ruin their day because he knew that telling them about his experience last night would do just that. If they came over tonight, he would talk to them. Instead, he slipped into his regular clothes and went to the living room. It was rather late, especially for him. It was just past 10. The house was empty. He found a note from his parents about them having gone out for the day. The only person home was Himiko, who was in her room. He noticed that she seemed to be avoiding him lately, and it bothered him. He wanted to say something, but he was being a coward in his own right, so who was he to say something? Instead, he turned on the television and began to write down everything he could remember from the dream last night and any theories of who his mystery visitor could have been. He didn't know how long he had been sitting there writing till the doorbell called him back, and he noticed it was just past noon. He was about to get up when Himi came out and ran to open the door. He called a good morning after her, to which she just nodded as an acknowledgement. 𝐈𝐵 walked in, pulled by Himi. She gave him a brief hello before the two girls disappeared into Himi's room. He wasn't sure what was happening. His mind began wondering that maybe one or both girls had developed crushes on someone and were talking about it. Perhaps it was Shoto. Izuku had to admit that after healing the boy's scar, he had grown up to be rather handsome. The dual-colored eyes and hair were eye-catching. It made sense to Izuku was rather plain-looking in his own opinion. Either way, he just put his head back and stared at the ceiling. He had done it to himself. He had been too damn scared to say anything, and opportunity had just passed him on. His attention was drawn from the ceiling by the sound of footsteps coming down the hall. Himiko and 𝐈𝐵 walked into the living room and commanded his attention. Izuku, we need to talk to you, Himiko said. And you have to promise not to talk or say anything till we finish, okay? Izuku suddenly became very nervous. I promise, he said, giving them his undivided attention. He noticed they were fidgeting with their hands, shifting their weight back and forth. 𝐈𝐵 was rubbing her cross. Do they not want to be heroes anymore? That would be sad, but I won't be angry or anything. Izuku, I am in love with you. Not like a brother, but like a partner. I want you to be my boyfriend, Himiko said as she stared deep into his eyes. 𝐈𝐵 closed her eyes before locking his gaze to her. Izuku, I am in love with you as well. Please go out with me. Izuku was shocked. Then he was terrified. Oh, I can't choose between them. This will destroy our friendship. He cannot do this and not hurt the hell out of the other. Maybe if he lies and says he doesn't feel that way for either of them, they will hate him and not each other. That might work. He was about to respond when 𝐈𝐵 held up her hand. We want you to date us both. I know it sounds weird, but we don't want you to choose between us, and I know that I just couldn't deal with being unable to be close to you. Same for me, Izuku. We talked about this and we want you to date us both. That means you treat us equally and give each of us the same treatment. Izuku tried to process. He knew sounds came out of his mouth, but neither were they words or anything coherent. He tried again. You both want to date me. Simultaneously and are both okay with this? Yes, they said in unison. They walked over, each taking one of his hands. Tell us how you feel about us. Don't lie, please, Izuku, 𝐈𝐵 said. Don't overthink it, Izu. Just tell us, Himi added. Izuku closed his eyes. If there is a deity of not fucking this up, your blessing would be appreciated. I am in love with you both and have been for a while. I have been so scared to say something because I feel like total shit. I couldn't choose because I am so greedy that I want two wonderful women. You both give me strength and confidence. I feel so warm when you two are near me. I know it makes me a giant coward, but I don't want to choose. I want you both. Then you just have to love us both. Hime said, kissing his cheek. Ibra also kissed his cheek. I expect you to take good care of both of us. Izuku didn't know what to say. He looked back and forth between the two of them, and then just wrapped them into a tight embrace. I will do my best. The trio stood there holding each other for a while before separating. Izuku looked at his girlfriends. So how does this work? No idea, Himiko said with a shrug. But we can figure it out together. Yes, we should sit down and do that, Ibra said faintly. I would like to cuddle with my boyfriend. I do too, Himiko said as the girls pushed Izuku back onto the couch before they took positions on either side of him like they had done many times. But this time, they both cuddled into him as they started to do precisely what they just said, figure this out.